Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon Kane, and this is my ally over here. This is Seahawks Brendan Nelson back in the house here. We've been chopping up throughout the offseason, but it's official now, Brendan. We are live. We are ready to actually see games that matter and count, and we're going to really figure out what this team truly is now, Brendan, are we not? It's all the conjecture and all the wonder and all of the forecasting. It all starts to come down, and now we truly are going to learn this team. Are you as hyped as I am right now as far as for this upcoming game?
I think you got to be. I think you got to be hyped right now. If you're a fan of an NFL team, now is the time to be hyped because 3 weeks from now, you might not be. If you're a fan of some teams out there, 3 weeks from now, it might be a little bit hard to get up for anything. So you may as well get up now.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that we'll still be a team in there that we'll still be feeling excited about, but there's definitely going to be a couple you can already see coming in this year that you go, boy, it might be a rough ride for those teams and where they're going to go. We usually at this point, we do some of this. We'd be getting a little bit of backtracking on some recent news. I think there's been some under the radar signings. Me and Brent aren't going to go a ton into that because they're really practice squad or just to kind of fill out the rotation for a short-term basis. Nothing that's hugely impactful, I think, for this upcoming game necessarily. So we're going to get right into this this matchup and kind of pick it apart a little bit as much as we kind of can on this one, Brendan. And I guess as I always like to do with this, was you walk into this matchup from a big picture standpoint before we get into the nitty gritty. What is it that stands out about it between these two teams for you?
Well, I think the main thing that stands out with these Denver Broncos right now is they are a team that is thinking about the future more than they are the present. I think that the two things that they did on roster cutdown day that stood out were releasing Tim Patrick, who had a good preseason and a good training camp, and releasing Samaje Perine, who was their best running back last year. These are not moves that you would make if you were a team that was contending and intending on trying to make a deep playoff run or even win the Super Bowl this year, because those players are still pretty good. Those players can still help you. But they decided that because they're not part of the future plans, because of age, because of, in Tim Patrick's case, injuries probably shortening his career, you have decided to move on from those two guys. That paints the picture of a team that understands that keeping somebody like Blake Watson, one of their running back rookies, around is more valuable than keeping somebody like a Samaje Perine around. So our first opponent, this is a team that I'm not saying they're tanking, obviously. That doesn't really happen in the NFL the way some people talk about it. But this is a team that has prioritized the future over the present. So in the present, they should be an extremely beatable team.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment of it. Teams will signal to you what they're doing. You have the Niners on the other end of the scale saying it's all about the here and the now. And those are moves that are absolutely about, hey, we've got some pretty big amounts of dead money to overcome over the next 2 years. And wherever we can save money now, whether we can start to clip this down, especially I'm sure from Payton's standpoint, Brendan, to look towards even next year to where can I get this into a year from now, even with the last of the dead money on the books, to being ready to go as a team and being ready to contend. He's also wanted to remake this. I think, would you say it's fair to say very firmly in his vision, somewhat in much the same way, a little bit of what he had there in New Orleans in the makeup of what he's trying to do here, even to the point of kind of pulling away what might be somewhat good prior. You see that as well?
Yeah. And when you get that long-term contract, when you get that kind of money and you know that you're going to be there for a while, no matter what, because there's going to be such resistance to firing you because you do have that money's fully guaranteed for a coach, by the way. There's no salary cap. Guaranteed money versus non-guaranteed money for coaches. There's going to be some resistance to you getting fired. So you have 3 to 4, maybe even 5 years pretty much locked up to run the team how you see fit. And if the team isn't a contender within that first few years, it's not the end of the world. Then yeah, you definitely do use that opportunity to try to remake the team in your image.
Yeah. And it's one that does just kind of seem that way, even down to the quarterback they picked here and what he's trying to do with him. But we'll get a little bit more into that as we get down to both sides of this game. There's definitely going to be the keys and players. Is there anything as an overriding factor? Or is it more of a collection of factors for you coming into this game on what's going to really be the deciding factor for the Seahawks to win or not?
I would say I'm mostly looking at this Seahawks offense against a Denver defense that actually was not as bad as people thought that it was last year. Last year, they had their numbers completely thrown off base by one really, really bad game. Throw that game out, that is a top 10 defense last year. And I look at what they've done to that defense this offseason. They haven't necessarily added a lot to it, but I don't think they've lost a ton either. I think it's actually somewhat similar. They lost Justin Simmons, right? That would probably be the main thing that they lost. And that's no small loss. But I really want to see this offense fly because we've never seen it in the NFL before. Ryan Grubb has never coached in the NFL before. And I think we're all very excited about Ryan Grubb, but we need to see this work in the NFL for at least a little bit before we can truly feel like this is the way. And I think that's the most important thing that I want to see in this game.
Well, I think that is a good point to make. I think offense is going to have to lead the way, I think, early through this season, just in general terms, because of the fact we are anticipating the defense needing to maybe find its footing in a starkly different defense than the prior one. You mentioned a little bit of that defense prior. I guess it does speak to the skewing heavily of the stats, being that when you do get to the baseline numbers they had, 27th in points allowed, 29th in yards allowed, 30th against the run. Middle of the road as far as takeaways go. I mean, it's at least on paper to me, and I know the Miami game does skew a lot of that, but on paper, there's a lot of, to me, hey, this has got a defense, as you said, that wasn't adding really anything significantly this offseason that is going to have a lot of attack points for you to go after.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Obviously, just this week, they extended Surtain, and I do think Surtain's probably the best corner in the league, or at least top 3. But you're right. They didn't exactly add a lot, especially because Drew Sanders is now injured. He's, I think, out for the season.
He is.
Yeah. Well, he's certainly out for this game. But that defense turned a corner after that Miami game and started playing really well. There was a stretch of football last season where they looked like the 85 Bears. They were forcing like 5 turnovers a game. They were dominant. So I'm mindful of that group. I don't think it's as bad as they seem at first blush. I think that it's a group that started the season kind of in quicksand with really those 2 bad games, the game against Washington and then the game against Miami. And then after that, they locked in and played good football. So I really want to see how this offense can work. We're obviously flying without Abe Lucas. And ultimately, the reason why this offense did not perform last year was because we were missing key players on that offensive line like Abe Lucas. So you've had a whole offseason now knowing that you might never really get Abe Lucas back. You've had an opportunity to plan for and mitigate that. So this is where we start to find out if your plans to mitigate that likely loss have worked or not.
Yeah, George Fant hopefully can be a better upgrade than what you've had in going to that backup role, from last year. And this Bronco defense is one that runs a defense that's not a Mike Macdonald branch. This is actually going to be more of a cover 3 branch of defense that's in many ways trying to hybridize itself a little bit, a la like we saw kind of Carroll trying to do with his defense to the cover 3 variety he was utilizing. And this is also one that's going to be a very decent amount of blitzing, I think, too, from what you're going to get from the Broncos in this game, where they're going to really try to, manufacture things. So, when you think about the combination of a team that's going to, blitz at a decent amount of rate up against you, and then you're going to be facing a lot of those cover 3 looks. It's going to mix some coverages, but you're going to get a lot of those looks on a baseline. How do you look at attacking that from an offensive perspective?
Now, when I take a look at this Denver defense, I do think that the run defense is probably the thing that stands out as the thing that you can attack a little bit. One of the additions they made this offseason was they actually brought in our old friend Cody Barton, and he's going to be starting for them in the inside of that defense. He's going to be their inside linebacker alongside Alex Singleton. Yeah, it's Singleton.
That's right.
And I look at that and I go, maybe this is going to be the kind of game where you want to establish the run, because I'm looking at that secondary and they lost Justin Simmons, but Surtain might be the best in the game. And I actually think Jaquan McMillan is a good kind of underrated nickel corner. I think he's better than the average nickel corner out there. So I don't mind that Denver secondary so much. So I know everyone's very excited about our wide receiver core this year, as they should be. But I'm not convinced that this is going to be some, 12-round KO of our receivers versus that secondary. I do think that there is a certain amount of risk in trying to go at that secondary. Like, not that the situations are equivalent, but 2 years ago when we played Denver in the season opener as well, Surtain did a really good job on Metcalf. And overall, I would hesitate a little bit to attack that area of the Denver defense.
Yeah, I mean, Metcalf didn't need. I mean, he definitely. It was also, I think, a little bit of there was still some rolling of doubles to him in times in that game because he got seven targets, 7 catches. He held up his end of the bargain. I do look at the cover 3 brand of defense that he runs. I think that fits very well into a spread style system that's going to be like, okay, you play it deep, we'll hit you short when we want to do the passing game. I agree. You got to run the ball, probably the centerpiece in this game. A lot of people want to put DK at the forefront, and I'm one of the main ones of them this season, game in and game out. Let's make this guy a centerpiece in how we attack. And I think certainly the letting him operate out of the slot and asking Surtain to have to guard 2-way routes rather than the 1-way route on the outside, putting him in motion. I think these are things that would be a very nice in a way of helping DK out and even getting him some more looks in this game. But this is a game where I think, more isolate that run. I would attack all day with Cody Barton on downhill blocks at the second level. Mm-hmm. I don't fear anybody on that defensive line of the Broncos. I isolate that block single up there. I hit a quick duo and then I peel down to Cody. And there's a really good chance for big runs there for Walker at that point. Because as we saw with Barton when he was starting here, if you can get a hat on him on the second level as a climber, he's going to get neutralized. He has a hard time getting off of those type of blocks. That's not his game. He wants to more run around back there a little bit more freely. And so I would really be attacking that from my standpoint in this game, heavily. And there'll be future weeks to probably more target DK. I still think you want to test a little bit, especially if you get single coverage on the outside and DK can have an opportunity to potentially get one-on-one on a 9 route where he can take it deep. But I do think you can go after this run game with him.
Yeah, maybe you'll be able to isolate him for a play or two on Riley Moss, which would be a lot of fun for DK Metcalf. He would love that. And honestly, if whoever Riley Moss is on, I think that's probably the area you go after. Like, a lot of people are kind of leaving Lockett for dead this year. They feel like he's just not going to do that much because of all the other stuff we have on this offense. But, don't sleep on Tyler Lockett in a game like this one, I think.
Indeed not. He's still better than a guy like Riley Moss, and I'm with you. Go after the weaknesses in the defense. This is a big part of what we're going to do now, is not a little bit of maybe the old of we are who we are, we're going to be what we're going to be, and we're going to run that. This is more of now, where are you weak? Where are you susceptible to us being able to attack you? And we're going to go after that. And I think that's what you're going to see a little bit more of the centerpiece of this. I think the 2 names we're going to mention here that are at the forefront of me, if I'm Grubb, and this is where I'm going to attack, is, like you said, Moss, partly because of, to your point again, McMillan being a solid slot, and then Surtain being, a very good corner in this league as well. Why not go for that more weakness that's just sitting there calling to you at that point? And Barton, much of the same way, where I want to get downhill on Barton. I want to be physical with Barton. I want to get Connor Williams, if he's going to be starting in this game, downhill up on him and make him show that he can get off those blocks. Because if he can't, that's a huge play for Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet in the run game. But I do like to, with the passing attack here and the short passing attack, you get the cover 3, you get that off coverage look stuff. Even from Geno's perspective, no matter what they're doing now around the line of scrimmage, I see that, and I see my single high safety, and I know I can anticipate that drop to depth, just like it hit us for years on that. Now all those, sort of in-breaking routes, the stop routes, those type of things open up for Geno at that point, and it's about him, of course, recognizing that coverage, properly from his standpoint in this game. I think on top of the other factor, I think for me, Brendan, is him really paying attention to the blitzes, because the Broncos will run some varied stuff at you, and they're not going to make it easy.
Yeah, and speaking generally, that Denver pass rush, there's not really a lot there that intimidates me. I think most teams we play this year will have better pass rushers than this Broncos team. They're missing one of their planned key rookie pass rushers in, like I said, Drew Sanders. So you've got Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Jonah Ellis, who's also a rookie, I believe. He was the Utah guy. Yeah. And then you've got some guys up front, like Zach Allen's good. Yeah. John Franklin Myers, they got that guy basically for free from the Jets because the Jets didn't want to pay him, but he's still a pretty good player. But there's not a lot here that is making me, scared that George Fant is going to get fried all night by somebody, or that Charles Cross is going to get lit up all night. it's a pretty manageable group of pass rushers, I think.
They're hoping for the Nick Bonito, the other edges, that they're taking that step forward, somewhat like we have at times in the past with our edge group, where we get young guys in the second or third round, which it's the Bonito and the other kid we're taking second, third. So they're hoping for those guys to keep kind of climbing up and growing a little bit. Who's that other second edge they got? Remind me on the name with it. It
was, Ellis?
No, the one
that Cooper?
No.
Baron Browning?
Yes, Baron Browning. Yeah, so Baron Browning, he's a little like, to me, I always get him confused with Alex Highsmith. Same kind of player, like undersized edges, really, really explosive off the snap. Also has a really nasty spin move that he can pull off on it. So that's a place where if you look at Fant, he's got pretty good mobility out there. They might target out on that side, but Benito's more of remember with him, he's that skinny rail guy. He's got a little bit of that shades of Darrell Taylor thing going too, Brendan. I think when you talk about running game and run game options here, targeting guys, if I got a side that I can target Nick Bonito and I got Barton on the same side, here we go. Send the steamroller out.
Yeah.
Let's pull guys in space and get people out in front. Let's go after that, because I think that's Bonito he has, going back to Oklahoma, we scouted him. He's got a lot of pass rush moves and his hands are really good, but he is light. He's gained a little bit of weight, but he is still light and susceptible at that time to not being able to root down in the run game. So it does come back to, as we talked about this offense, Brendan, just getting after the run game in this and really being committed to it, because I think there's going to be some holes here for you to go after with this Broncos team.
Mm-hmm. And another guy who doesn't really intimidate me much would be Vance Joseph, who's still their DC. I thought that they might be trying to get somebody a little more prolific this season, but they decided to stick with him. Not one of those guys who just kind of always hangs around and gets a job, and you're not really sure why teams keep picking him over other people. And there's just something safe and secure about it. And I do think he had moments where he did a pretty good job last year, but he's not one of those defensive coordinators that I think is just going to be able to whip Ryan Grubb in his first ever NFL game, like I would with some of these other DCs that kind of might take him to school a little bit.
Agreed. I think he also is going to be held a little bit more harsher in responsibility of things, because he took over a unit that was so good when he walked in the door. You weren't coming in to salvage this or make it better. You were coming in here to keep it motoring and going. And how we saw this with the Niners this offseason, Brendan, where that guy had that defense playing pretty much close to where they've been playing recently, and he still got basically the blame for why they didn't, I guess, get the Super Bowl, because he's the guy that got sent the door and nobody else did. And so that's a little bit of what's, I think, holding Joseph in this part. I do agree with you. He's not a guy that necessarily I love a ton. And I guess this is more because we had to learn this lesson here as well, in addition to this being that your defense is this thing and you're trying to update it as here we get to the evolution of the sport. And rather than evolve to what the new defense is that you got to kind of start to run now, you just try to hybridize your old defense. And it's like, it's still old, it's still, and it doesn't always work hybridizing it. It's like, it had the rules built in that were built in for a reason. It ran the plays it ran for a reason. And now you're going to start to try to structure this stuff. And I think you kind of end up with a amalgamation of an abomination almost of a defense that doesn't really have as much of a identity to it. And nor the real clear way of how it's trying to even attack, really. And I think about that when I think about him. And I was talking to the Bronco content creator about this, because that's what it sounds like he's tried to do, the same sort of pathway a little bit. He's willing to blitz more. That's the thing that's different from him, of a type like when we ran our cover 3, where we never were willing to really blitz. And that's the part too, Brendan, when it comes to the offense in this game. Two things I want to see if we can give Geno on this one is a lot of option calls to the screen game, where he can feel the pressure come up and they've just got a plan baked in. Oh, it's a bubble screen out like they did to Laviska in the preseason. There was a play where he was uncovered, the safety was back there, they had more guys up around the line of scrimmage, so you could just flick it out to there, and if the receiver just barely lands his block on the outside, it's an 8 or 9 yard run. But you can get around the blitz quickly that way. You can counter the blitz quickly that way. And the second part of this would be give Geno a lot of time up around the line of scrimmage. We're watching tonight in this game against with Lamar Jackson and the Chiefs, where there's times Lamar's coming up and the play clock's coming down really low, just as they're coming up to the line of scrimmage, almost like the play caller's like sitting there. I hate it when they do that, where they're sitting there like, 60 call it. Coach, when you make the call, yeah, I know. Let me look at that play. And you're like, get the call in, get your quarterback up there so he can get to the line of scrimmage and then assess what's going on to change things. Because part of what makes Geno at his best, I think, is giving him an opportunity to get up there and have that time to kind of look around, maybe even a little up-tempo stuff today or in this game a little bit to help that out too.
Yeah, that's what made the Peyton Manning offense so fun to watch. That's why it was always my favorite. That Peyton Manning offense, it was all about getting the quarterback to the line of scrimmage with 30 seconds on the play clock so he could just pick you apart. Loved it.
Yeah, I do too, because it sometimes just feels like stealing a little bit because he catches the defense their pants down. And if you have a guy that's a quarterback who's been around enough, they're going to read it right. They're not going to misassess what they're seeing out there. And that's why you want to let them have the opportunity to do that. So really, those would be my heavy keys in there, Brendan, is give Geno a lot of control in this game, use that short passing attack, and then target that blitz when they're coming too. Make sure you're identifying it and getting the time to be able to identify it, because I think that's what he's going to dial up. And I think that's basically what I'm getting the sense on Vance Joseph's adjustments to this is that old school cover 3, we're not going to blitz, a lot of zone defense, a lot of drop to depth. Now we're going to still drop to the depth on the backside, but we're going to give you a lot more action up front, running games, running blitzes, doing a lot of that.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right. That sounds about par for the course for him, for Vance Joseph. And I think it's pretty beatable. I think that, for the same reason that our cover 3 eventually became beatable, it's predictable. And Geno's pretty good at the cerebral part of football that I don't know if it's his best asset, but it's certainly an asset that he has.
Yeah. Well, I think it helps when you get more of, I think part of what upends this asset at times is that the pass protection up front just hasn't been good, even when the calls are in place at times. Mm-hmm. So it's harder to have, I think, as much confidence. But I think you saw in that first 10 games when he went in there and started, where you really got a sense that the pass pro was holding up. You had Lucas, you had Cross. The interior was relatively okay through his first 10 games. And there was a lot of times in there where he was coming up. I remember that check run that he had to Rashad Penny at Detroit, where it was pass play, comes up, feels the pressure, goes to the check of Penny houses it on a 60-yard run. All right, let's get to that, especially I think in this game. I'd like to see that because I think the Broncos are going to, it's like the try hard defenses thing, Brendan. You already have a try hard defense anyway. They're going to try to do manufacture stuff, simulate stuff. You throw on top of that then a coach that's already trying to lean a little bit into the blitz. And I'd be anticipating, if I was Grubb, that we're going to get a pretty steady dose of it, especially with the Hawks' problems last year in stopping some of the blitz looks.
Yeah, we're going to have to prove that we can handle that. And Connor Williams should, in theory, make all the difference, right? You have a center who's really good at communication, really good at movement, really good at just doing everything that a center is supposed to do. That should make all the difference. Also, you've got Bradford with an extra year of experience under his belt. But, I've said it before, I've said it again. I am concerned about the Laken Tomlinson experiment. I am not convinced that's going to go well. And looking at a game like this, I don't think it'll come back and bite you too bad, but I am still keeping an eye on that.
It'll be interesting to see how he plays in this game, especially with his fit in this offense, which raises certain questions. And I don't think he's going to have, let's say, a very long hook here, Brendan, if he's not out there getting it done, because I think if Bradford can settle in at right guard, that just opens that door so much more open to Haynes coming in and sliding in and then taking over for Lincoln if it goes down that track. What do you do as a general, beat of a game going offensively? What do you see here offensively going? Is it we're going to come out and just do a little bit of a feeling them out thing first game of the season? Is it coming out and we're going to establish the run? Do you see more of Grubb throwing the pass, using the pass to set up the run in this opening part? As a general, what would be your way of doing it on this defense, I guess? Well, not your way, but what you just kind of anticipate, I guess, more.
I mean, with Grubb in control, you would probably say that it's going to be more passing than running, because that's his modus operandi from college. Again, I think for this game, maybe you consider taking a slightly different approach. But at the end of the day, offensive coaches like Ryan Grubb view the passing game as an extension of the running game, right? It's kind of like that Andy Reid thing, where he didn't have a great running back when he was in Philly. So he basically used screen passes and dump offs and check downs as like, well, this is my running game now. It's basically the same thing. So I don't know if we're necessarily going to see a lot of running the ball, but I could absolutely see a lot of short passes, like the bubble screens that you're talking about, to kind of simulate the running game from the perspective of Grubb.
Yeah. That's where I see it as well. And amazing catch in this Baltimore game for a touchdown to tie it up. Holy hell. That was insane.
I just saw it. Yeah.
And they're going to go for 2. Let's do a play call on this. They're going
for 2.
All
right. Okay.
They're going for 2. We got 26-27 here. Likely just caught an insane touchdown in the back corner of the end zone. And now they're going to go for 2 are the Ravens. It looks like he's in, Brendan. That toe looks in.
All right, let's see here. Wasn't Likely the guy who died on the previous play? How is he back in?
He just died. They hit him with a syringe, and
I think he's out. I think he's out. That's not a
Yeah.
catch.
Let's see.
I don't think.
Nope, he's out.
Yeah,
Damn,
he's out.
dude. Damn, that's brutal call at the end there.
Mhm.
That's just
And
tough, man. Whew.
yep, send him home crying, I guess. That's too bad because he played a great game, likely.
Boy, he did.
He looks better than Mark Andrews, who does not look like his best self anymore, does he?
He had an insane injury last year with that knee. That thing was torqued up, I
Yeah.
think. Oh, here's the angle right here. They got it like
Yeah.
it's undeniable on that one. I was gonna say maybe his toe was lifted. He had a little lifted toe. But
Yeah.
no,
Well,
just
it's a heck of a way to start the season, isn't it? That
good,
is
good opening game, man. I think that was a solid opening game. I think how about Harbaugh going for 2 at the
I think you're going to see more teams do that as they realize that defense is getting a little harder and harder to play. And also, they haven't changed the OT rules. A touchdown ends the game still, right?
Right.
In regulation. So therefore, it's like you kind of know if you give the ball to Mahomes in OT, he's going to go score and you're never going to get the ball. So you want to avoid that at all costs. I mean, I like it. Lamar should be able to get a 2.5-yard conversion, right? Like that's
yeah. I mean, I think you're making the case. You're selling me on it. I walked into kind of going, man, I don't know. You just maybe your defense is hung tough this game overall. I mean, yeah, it's Mahomes, but they've held up their end of the bargain for the most part. But I mean, it's null and void that they didn't get the touchdown. But
right.
You might be right. This might be a way it goes. And certainly when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and giving him an opportunity with the ball in his hands versus just, I don't want to give Patrick any more chances. Let's have this on us or not. I could, that if there's one quarterback like that, be it a Brady or Mahomes type, that you'd be like, let me avoid that at all costs. This would be probably that type of guy. But again, null and void because basically they didn't get the touchdown in on that. Yeah. So I was asking you on this, how you see this offensive playing out then on we were kind of right in the middle of as that play happened there. So sorry about that.
No problem.
But you're seeing do you see us like we get on them quickly on top of it and then it's a press down? Or just stay on that running game and kind of feel it out there?
Oh, right. Okay. So yeah, I think it's in Grubb's nature to want to be pass first. And generally speaking, I think that's the right philosophy to have in modern football. You pass the ball a lot early and you get ahead, and then you run the ball at the end of the game when you're ahead. I wonder if I would deviate from that a little bit this game. I think it would probably be a pretty good idea to deviate a little bit from it in a game like this. But I think that at the end of the day, you are who you are. And I think that to Grubb, those bubble screens to a guy like Chenault, or those little free, easy completions on an RPO to a Metcalf or Lockett or JSN or whoever are just extended running plays. To him, that's like the same thing. It's just like, it's so high percentage, it may as well be a handoff, but I like it better because it puts it puts the ball carrier in a better position to go get yards. So I think at the end of the day, you are who you are, and Ryan Grubb is who he is. He's going to want to throw the ball. He's been gifted a really, really talented group of pass catchers, and I don't think he's going to drop that just because he's looking at the opponent and he's like, they might be a little bit weaker against the run than the pass.
Yeah, to put this in perspective, I think that we're going to see 4 or 5 bubble screens in this game, Brendan, and we will have not seen that many bubble screens. And this may be a small thing, folks, but this is a big counter to the blitz, big counter to pressure looks, big counter to the things that they've given our offensive lines problems. I think, Brendan, there's maybe only 2 times I can remember in Seahawks history recently that you could really go to of us really working the bubble that many times over the course of the game. One was Matt Hasselbeck's final game against the Saints, where he went crazy, but you threw like 5 bubbles that game to a Beno Bamanu. And then the other one was the Percy Harvin game against the Packers coming off the Super Bowl win the next year in the opening game, where you really worked Harvin in that game a bunch. But outside of that, we've always kind of just barely peppered it into the offense. I think you'll see a lot more of it, to your point, at the forefront throughout the course of this game, whether it is traditional runs or using that like the run. And especially as an option basis kind of thing, where Gino's got kind of the option to call it if he sees it on the fly and he sees the guy in blocked. But I do see that this offense having effectiveness against this Bronco defense. And as we get to the win in this upcoming, if we get this win coming up, I think it's going to really be on the back of the fact the offense being really effective against this defense and finding a lot of room both in the pass and the run, targeting guys that they can hit that are, very much weak links on this defensive unit, especially Brendan. Not just like, well, suboptimal players. I'd opt for kind of weak links and where they're standing. And that's the nature of the beast when you're Broncos turning this over.
Yeah, and with Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson out of there, you got to say their safeties are probably a big weakness. They got PJ Locke and Brandon Jones back there. I think first next man up would be JL Skinner. Probably it's probably his time to get some burn eventually this year.
So we loved us some JL Skinner coming out of Boise State.
Just not really a fit for the new defense, but in general, a lot of fun.
Yeah,
but that should be something you could attack. So even though we are talking about the modern NFL where the deep ball's kind of gone extinct because of the cover 2 shell, you don't see it nearly as much. Maybe this is the game where you do take a couple of those deep shots and you hit them because you're not playing the best safeties in the world.
I'd love to whip out the trick plays for this. We know Grubb loves his trick plays, and this is to me where you can attack those new safeties for the Broncos and test them out. Much like in how you have a Bronco that's kind of trying to be a bit of the try-hard unit, understanding it doesn't have the personnel to necessarily match up with you, so we'll manufacture it. I think that's what you get with some of these players too, where it's everybody rally to the ball. Everybody get up. Everybody hurry. Everybody be aggressive. Go fast. Well, what do trick plays do? They take advantage of that guy who's going fast, getting into one direction a little bit too far, not staying fundamentally sound in his positioning, and then you're able to attack it over the top. And we know with Grubb, at a centerpiece of his offense, averaged about 1 trick play a game at Washington. So the question would be, Brendan, over under on 2 trick plays in this game from your perspective.
Which receiver on the Seahawks would you want to be throwing the pass?
Well, I think you can't have DK because you want him to be the deep guy. Whether he's the guy that you go to or not, at least he pulls the coverage to where he's at. Lockett's got – I'm worried about Lockett's baby hands. I think Lockett's got a little bit of the Pickett syndrome going on there.
Okay.
And so I think we got to go JSN, and then it's out of the slot with him. So you go JSN, and then you run a backside post with DK, and then you give DK's going like this, and then you let Geno just throw DK open to the big side of the field as you get everybody closing in.
I think Bobo might be better, though. I think Bobo will probably be a good quarterback.
He's got some size to him, yeah.
Although Bobo might be the guy you want in the red zone, in the end zone, catching the trick play. I don't know. Maybe you want Bobo catching like the Tim Tebow pass.
Well, to your point, remember the Rams game last year, the opening game of the year, we ran a trick play and he was open, but the pressure got home too fast on Geno on the trick play. And Geno ended up throwing it, just not able to get it in there. So that'd be good too. Though I'll say, I mean, you're right. At his size, Bobo could probably get that 40, 45 yards down the field. No problem, Probably got a little wind up though with those big old gangly arms of his. I think he's going to be like,
yeah, this is where you wish we had DJ Dallas still, right?
I suppose. Yeah. I suppose DJ was going to throw it. That's the part you can say about him, man. He wasn't going to leave any. He was going to not try it out. He's going to let it rip. So we'll see with that. What do you got over or under on 2?
I mean, you got to go 1.5, right? Because if it's 2, it's too easy to just take the push.
Okay, we'll go 1.5.
Yeah, I'll go over on that. That sounds like something Ryan Grubb would do.
I think he's going to style it a little bit. I think he's going to show him. He's like, here's what I'm about. Here's some of my flavor.
Right. Well, we have to set the rules here. Like a reverse is not a trick play, right? That's not a trick play. Just a reverse.
No. It'd have to be like a flea flicker. You throw to the bubble throws it. You run to one guy, you throw it back to the quarterback. Grubb loves to do that move where he has it go to one guy, the guy throws it back to the quarterback behind the line of scrimmage. So it's got to be something like that. Reverse wouldn't be necessarily something I would consider.
Yeah, and one thing that I think it was Metcalf was saying in his press conference this week was, we kept the offense vanilla in the preseason. We hit a lot of stuff. So you haven't seen what we're going to be doing out there, really. So if that's true, there should be some stuff like that ready to go.
It should be. I love that it mixes in there, Brendan, just like he mixes in the big plays and the screens and his utilization of run and how he diversifies it. I think he just does a really good job of making sure he's going to mix it up on you defensively and not give you a way of really being able to lean on this offense to a certain direction. I think we'll see that this week, and those trick plays help that happen because even if you run it once, Brendan, right? You run a trick play once as a team, then NFL defenses throughout the course of the week have to sit back and they say, we have to prepare for this. We have to remain sound then in your spacing on the field. You can't run and drive up on the run game like you would have done against other teams who don't run trick plays, who run 3 times a year their trick play. If you have the stats on that as a defense, don't you, Brendan? You go, well, we'll just trust they're not going to run it against us this week. And if they happen to hit it on us this week, we'll adjust on the fly at that point. But you know what I'm saying on that? Like, it's different between a team offense that really does go, no, we're going to let this go.
Yeah. So here's the question. Can you come up with 17 different trick plays so you have one to run each week? That way the defense is constantly just like getting taken off guard. Can you do 17?
That's the fun part about Washington, though. Remember with this too, is that he has all of those iterations of fake trick plays. That's the fun part of it, is that you start getting now defensively into the mindset of, oh, it's this to this. And then he runs it. And you're like, trick. And then the guy just ends up taking it up the field and he just isn't running the trick at all. He sets it up and he'll kind of finesse it even a little bit more, through that. I don't know if there's that many trick plays. There's probably a good number you could come up with creatively speaking, but it's just the fact he'll run it and then he'll run the fakes with it too. I mean, Texas game, I think I counted 3 or 4 fakes of a trick play over the course of the game in addition to what he was doing. And it helps. It does help, man. It makes the defense continue to have to think and not allow him to be as aggressive.
Yeah, Grubb's going to have to make some phone calls to some of his buddies to try to come up with that many trick plays.
He probably will. Yeah, he averaged over one a game last year with UW, so he figured it out last year. But I bet there was a few of those he reran that were the same variety.
Yeah, I remember. I think there was a Rose Bowl way back in the day where they ran a play that Richard Nixon gave them. They like the president called in and suggested like a trick play they could run, and they actually ran it, and it didn't work. But that's looking for plays in some very unexpected places. That's
Richard Nixon with a failed call. No.
So, yeah. But yeah, I would expect the trickeration to come out a little bit here. Now, would it count if they do the punt return where the guy goes to one side, pretends to catch it, and then the ball's actually on the other side of the field? Do you remember that one?
I kind of do feel like that's almost a trick play. Yeah,
it is. But is it? Yeah.
I mean, it's not traditional, but it's still, I would say, a trick play because it's still misdirection and, it's got that same kind of thing, getting you to go this way and trying to confuse you, into thinking this. So I'd say so. It's on the line. It's almost a push on that one, but I'm going to call it a trick play on that one.
Yeah. I like the one where the guy lays down in the end zone and his jersey blends in with the ground on a kickoff, so they forget that you're there. There was a guy on the Eagles who did that one time.
My favorite's the one where the guy's going off the sideline and they do the limp move just as they're about to get the sideline, and then they stop and then they set up. Buffalo did that to us once. It pissed me off, but it was smart. Buffalo did that to us on a kick. You do it on like a field goal. So he's like, and he goes over the side and then he stops and then he just runs a route and he's wide open because everybody was watching him limp off the field thinking he was going to, they just watch him limp all the way off the field. I hate that move too.
I think I remember that. I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, that one was infuriating. Holmgren, I think, almost had his head explode on that one. He was a mad man on that day in Buffalo.
Yeah, if it happened to Pete, he would have just found it funny. Pete would have just kind of laughed at it.
He probably would have taken his head and chewed his gum a little harder for a few minutes there. Like, okay, gotta watch it. Okay, but it's a kind of a cold-blooded move too, just a little bit. Nick Holmquist, thank you for becoming a YouTube member of the channel. I really appreciate you for doing that, Nick. Very kind of you. Welcome aboard here on that side of it.
Welcome aboard, Nick.
Our man Coda Dad, always on the spot with the donos, and he is coming right back in the house today again with another one. Thank you for that, Coda Dad. I appreciate the $14. Hope you're having a great night as well. He says, I'm a bit bearish on the team because the O-line still seems like spare parts. Linebacker group is thin and would like another true defensive tackle.
I mean, the offensive line, there are a couple of, I think that, that sounds a little demeaning to call somebody a spare part, but Laken Tomlinson, I mean, he's at that point in his career where you could maybe call him that and not have it be completely beyond the pale, right?
Yeah, I think it's a tough terminology, but is it accurate there with him? Probably a little bit there.
Yeah. What I would say, though, is that there's the offensive line that you have, and then it's how you play with that offensive line. Like the Niners have not had a good offensive line for years now. The Trent Williams has been their only good offensive lineman in many of the recent seasons, but that team wins. That team scores points. They find ways around it. They swap guys in and out on the whole rest of that offensive line. Everybody except Trent Williams I guess Jake Burford had like one good year, the center guy. Did I say his name right?
That
Jake
sounds right.
Brendel. There we
Brendel.
go.
They have a Burford too, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah, but he had like one good year, but that is not a good offensive line. That team still gets it done. There are ways to deal with the offensive line that you have. And I think the most important thing with your offensive line quite often is not how talented each individual player is, but the connection that those guys have, because they're all playing together. The more they build experience with each other, the better they're going to be as a unit. And that's going to trump their individual talent levels at some point. So just, as an example, last year, every game we had a new starting offensive line, it felt like. So we never got to build that continuity. That was worse than the lack of talent we had at those positions. So this year, if these guys can stay healthy long enough to build continuity, I think that will overcome some of the lackluster talent in one or two positions.
yeah, I agree with that. I do think too that there's a lot more than spare parts in the overall standpoint here, coded adverse, even if us looking at recent seasons. I mean, you have a top 10 pick in Charles Cross. That's certainly not that. In Fant and Lakin, you can maybe say that, but even in Fant, you're not counting on him to, I don't think, start the whole year. And I think, in my opinion, I could be the only one who took these comments this way. But when John Schneider was asked at the end of his press conference this last week if he first saw Abraham Lucas missing the whole season and him saying no at this point, I think that that's significant in him saying that. I think that there's something to that a little bit. So though, in that place, that's not the case. I think the team has also done a great job of doing, you want to build an offense, you want an offensive line that's good, you have to do it by investment and putting good investment into it. So first and multiple third round picks, fourth round picks, fifth round picks. Connor Williams is a top 5 center in this sport. That's not a spare part. That's a guy coming off an injury that you're getting to benefit from the timeline of his injury recovery because he wasn't available during free agency, full goal. Otherwise, he would have signed a 4-year, $55 million deal at his age. And so I will say your assessment's correct in that there's a question there, coded at, about the offensive line as a whole. And to Brennan's point on this, can it cohesively come together with the chemistry? But it has so much more talent and depth of talent there than it's ever had in the past few years, and many years at that, I would argue, from my standpoint. What about the linebacker thinness, Brendan?
Well, it is, but linebacker is also not really that important of a position anymore. If there was a position to go cheap on in the modern NFL, I think that's the one. I think that's just kind of the direction that football is taking right now. Linebackers do not affect the game as much as they used to because the passing game has become so prevalent. So, like last year, I mean, think about the defense the last 2 years, right? The defense was really bad 2 years ago. A lot of people said, well, it's because we lost Bobby Wagner. So we bring back Bobby Wagner. Defense doesn't get better at all. Nothing really changes. And that's not because Bobby Wagner's terrible at his job or anything now. It's because that there's only so much that you can do as a linebacker to affect the modern game, unless you're Fred Warner running down the field 40 yards, covering nickel slot receivers, and you're able to do stuff like that. Or you have to be the best of the best of the best, or else you're just kind of a guy. Yeah. And I will say that I'm not super comfortable with the idea of Tyrese Knight having to take snaps this year because he is a rookie and he is relatively inexperienced. But at the same time, I also don't think that's going to be the thing that makes or breaks the season, because linebackers are just not really that kind of player anymore.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely, again, coded out a little bit in the place of where I came into this training camp where I am now. I think you're right about being a thin group, and that this was one of the spots where you weren't able to maybe address as thoroughly as some of the other positions you've addressed in this offseason, trying to top the depth out. And I do think that Tyrese Knight's development this preseason, and when you hear a guy like Dodson talk about him and you see how he's played, how natural he is, and this is with me coming off my assessment of him being a little bit down on him out of UTEP, I think that's got to open the eyes on the depth part of it, where you go, okay, if he's got to start 3 or 4 games this year, I'm not saying the majority of the season, but if I got to throw him out there for 3 games, can he hold the line out there? Can he do a good enough job, to Brendan's point, if the rest of the stuff is working around him really well? And based on what I saw with preseason, I'm kind of thinking maybe on that. And this is also a position I think, coded out, that if it gets thinner, you can go out and make a trade deadline deal, trade for, and find a guy out there that's a decent enough player. Because again, back to Brendan's point on this, it's not as valued a position. So going out there and finding a trade to be made, it's not the same as finding a high quality defensive tackle like Leonard Williams, where you're giving up top end prices of a second round pick. You can make that deal happen with a little bit of a later pick. What did Ernest Jones just go for as an inside linebacker to the Texans, Brendan, who's 24 years old going into his prime? Was a 5th round pick he just went for. So
wet newspaper. So I do get that the thinness is there, and I agree with you there, Codad, but I do think that it's something they can both address. And I also like a little bit of develop. Michael Barrett coming in late. Michael Barrett knows this defense back and forth. He's on the practice squad. He could be called up. I'm not saying these guys will be dominant if they're asked to play, but I do think that they could just, you want them to hold the line if you got to call upon them. Anything else. You don't want them to be a Cody Barton-like detriment if they're out on the football field. And I don't know if either of those two guys would necessarily be that. They might, but I don't know that they're that necessarily either on that. And then defensive tackle, I don't know. Is there a whole opening right now for another defensive tackle from your standpoint, Brendan? Well, we don't have great nose tackles, but I think this is another modern NFL thing. The big, bruising, 350-pound nose tackle is also kind of not in vogue in the modern NFL. And the ones that it is in vogue for, you want to spend a very minimal amount of money on. We got Hankins for $3 million. Eventually we'll have Cam Young for basically the minimum, well, less because he's on that rookie deal. And that should be all you need, because those guys, they're not going to be on the field on passing downs. Passing downs is when you maybe put Byron Murphy at nose, maybe Jaron Reed, if you still view him in that way. You want guys who can get after the quarterback. So when you do the math, the percentage of plays where you need a true nose tackle out there, and I'm assuming that's what this comment is addressing, is really not that high. And you really only are going to need most games 30 snaps total from a true nose tackle. And you can get that pretty easily between two guys, and you don't need them to be great, because again, this is a passing league right now. And what you get from the nose tackle in terms of stopping the run is not something that is super valuable. So I am inclined to agree a little bit with this, because Hankins is getting older, and I think at a certain point he's going to be completely useless, and this year could be that year. But I don't think that I don't think that that's an area that is high priority when you're trying to fix a team that had quite a few problems.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a bit of a point here from your standpoint, Codad, on this, and that they just brought in Bohanna or whatnot, I think, from the Packers as a nose tackle. You moved on from Kyon Barnes, who you had brought in to be kind of that nose tackle backup until Cam Young could come back, or just that back end guy to make sure you got reinforcements in the ranks there. But we'll see if Cameron Young can get back on the field. I think the team has a lot of faith in him being able to be a guy that can be in that rotation of nose tackle snaps. Again, to Brennan's point on this, a lot of this is how many snaps you'll actually be and needing a position of a nose tackle going, how many snaps you'll truly have a guy at zero tech, for instance. Not very often. You'll be a nickel a lot of the time, 4-man fronts a lot of the time, or stack boxes. And Byron Murphy, they played a lot of him at nose tackle in the preseason. It does seem to be some of their intention to have him out over there, and he can maybe fill out those extra snaps until Cam Young can come along, perhaps, on that side of it. But great thoughts.
If he's still here, I haven't heard anything about Cam Young in a month and a half. So maybe he's like Bison Deli or something. He just went to another country and never came back.
It's been quiet, man. It has, but it has been pretty quiet with Jarek Reed too. They don't seem to be saying much with those guys. So we'll see if we'll get an update at some point with them, but something to monitor, Codad. And thank you for that donation. Really appreciate you on that. Very kind of you,
Codad. Yeah.
Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $2 donation. Says Lamar came up short against Patrick Mahomes again.
Yeah. It's starting to feel like it's just going to be impossible for Lamar to get through a postseason without running into at least one defense that can just completely clip his wings. It's got to be very frustrating, because against maybe 26 teams, he can just completely walk all over them. But eventually he's going to run into one of those teams that can just pull him apart, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty much where I would be with it as well. I think that I also am wondering a little bit if this season's going to be a backward season for Lamar. Last year, he took a step forward as a passer and processing and pushing the ball down the field, and he started out that way in this game. But then it quickly evolved back down to Lamar, I'm going to run the ball all over the place. I'm going to run like a running back. I'm not going to slide. I'm going to dive for yards. And you watch that throughout this game. And you see how they've got Derrick Henry in there. The big worry you had with him is how's that going to work out the RPO read option game out of shotgun with Lamar? Like Derrick Henry's not a shotgun running back. You're under center, and then you give him the ball from under center running back. And they worked some of that in there in this game, and it worked when they did to a degree, but that's not what Lamar wants to do. He wants to be in shotgun, right? He doesn't want to be playing under center all that often. And how is that really going to work? I don't know. And the defense trying to kind of get its footing back with Macdonald gone and losing, I think, a couple of guys. I just think that that's an issue. And the bottom line with it too, and I said this in the playoff game, and it still remained true in this game. There was about 5 throws in this game, again, where Lamar comes up and he's got to push the ball down the field, deep down the field. It can be a deep post route. It can be a 9 route. He's got to put a ball accurately on a spot, and he just can't do it. He just does not have that ability to do it consistently. It's too wild of a variance. And he must have had 5 of them in this game, Brendan, that he just could not hit. And same thing in the playoff game. And it's going to be interesting if you start to see now maybe smart defensive coordinators and stacking boxes, taking away his run, taking away their short passing attack as much as you can, easier said than done, and just forcing him into those throws down the field. Because I don't know if he can hit those throws. Watching today, there was just some of those were wildly inaccurate. He had one where he had to throw the leverage. Did you see it was the Likely one, I think, where Likely clears up the center of the field and he throws it straight up to depth. So he throws it to the end zone. And Likely's running the crosser kind of across the field. And the trailing coverage is like this. So if he just throws it into the crosser, it's fine, but he throws it up the field and the coverage gets back up on top of Likely on the play. So it's like just in that moment seeing it, and he's even tapping his chest. He knows in the moment, like, that's on me there, because throw your guy open. That's throw your guy open thing. He's open. Just throw it away from the leverage of the defender. And it'll be a completion all day right there if he does that. But instead it was almost a near interception because he just about threw to the freaking defender on the play.
Yeah. And, in my Discord, a lot of people were talking about Todd Monken tonight about how, he called this terrible game. They need to fire Todd Monken. Why is he calling the game like this? And quite often offensive coordinators call games like this because of the limitations of their personnel. Like, I don't think Todd Monken did a great job tonight, but in general, I think that the game plans that you see him put together are built around the fact that Lamar Jackson just can't do certain things.
Yeah. I think that what I liked about Monken last year is I just felt like he really built in a little bit more of the intermediate passing attack at the forefront. And I think that that's where Lamar can throw good balls, like a in-cutting route or a post route or a stop route. He can timely get it there. He's got some velocity on the throws, and it's relatively accurate on those kind of throws. They just seem to go away from it to me, and he got into I'm going to run it mode at times. And that's where I think Monken did, drop the ball a little bit with it. But that's what was done last year that was so good to me on how they did this and went through with it. And it's going to be interesting to see if NFL defenses start to try to coordinate the same kind of game plan. It's easier said than done. Chiefs are a great defense. They still give it 20 points. That's them at home in Arrowhead, first game of the season. You're unveiling the banner. So, most teams, Lamar's still going to put that work in, but it does stand out to me watching him over and over again against teams that are quality, that when they can force him into that box, there's just not a lot. They don't have a lot of other answers that they can call upon.
Yeah. Like, I'm thinking back to like the Peyton Manning Colts that always seemed to run into trouble when they got to the playoffs. That felt a little more fixable to me. I don't know if this is fixable. This idea of like, you can win league MVP, you can dominate the regular season. Eventually you're going to run to a team that can just kind of, take your lunch money. With the Peyton Manning Colts that kind of had that problem, it felt like it was fixable. Now, maybe the best way to fix it was to just get home field advantage so you could get all your games in a dome, but it felt like there was something you could do about it.
Yeah, that and a bitch and moan to the NFL to get them to change the rules on physical cornerbacks on the outside, so your guys don't get mauled anymore by Patriot cornerbacks.
But yeah, I don't know I'm not sure what the Ravens can do. That's going to be interesting to figure out here.
I think they've hoped that Henry's going to be that thing that can be that factor to it. I don't think I agree I think he'll be helpful to them, but that's not a solution. And they have an offensive line in work too, but you come back to it. This is why I always say, Brendan, with me with quarterbacks, give me the arm strength first and foremost, because if your arm strength's limited, no matter what other thing you're really great at on this side of it, teams can then take that thing away, and you don't have the answer to hit those throws, those NFL big boy throws down the football field, and it all gets real simple, real quick. And this is with Lamar, it's not arm strength. He's got the arm strength. It's just accuracy on deep balls, timing on deep balls, touch on deep balls, anticipation on deep balls when he's trying to, when the timing is right to throw it. He had one where he rolled out and he sort of tried to pepper it up, right? Where the defender just could turn around and kind of swat it around on a 9 route, where it's like, that ball's got to go out in front, right? Zay Flowers put it out in front, let him go run after it. The safety's closing deep late. So the safety's underneath. He's not up top. So just run it, throw it up over the top there, Lamar, at that point. And instead he shorts it up so that the receiver slows down Zay Flowers, and it turns into a contested catch situation with Zay Flowers at 5'8", with the corner that's right there now pulled back step for step when he had a step on him. It's those like little things like that you see when he throws the ball where you just go, yeah, it's not going to, I don't know where the fix is on this one necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you though, Jeffrey. Appreciate it for that donation. Mamagalan, thank you for the $5 donation, brother. It's good to see you in the house. It says Ravens looked so sloppy and discombobulated. They lacked identity. Do we expect a sluggish first half as well, or does Seattle feel different with Mike Mac?
I mean, I think that all teams tend to kind of start a little bit, or at least a lot of teams. I'll put it to you that way. A lot of teams do come out of the gates just a little bit slow. And I think it would be reasonable to expect the Seahawks to be one of those teams. They're going to be playing a game at home that they probably feel pretty comfortable about. And the main thing that they're going to want to avoid is just, they don't want to turn it over. They don't want to give the Broncos a bunch of free points. So they might play it safe for a little while. It might be like one of those Washington Huskies first halves from last year where they wouldn't really do that much. And it'd be like maybe 7-0 at the half because they're just kind of taking it easy, feeling things out. And then the second half, things just blow up. It could be one of those. But I don't think it's necessarily anything that we would be super concerned about.
Yeah, I think that with the Ravens struggles a little bit today and in a little bit of sluggishness, and they played at the end of the day 20 points, 27 points to Mahomes and company at home. Opening game isn't the worst way of playing, and they lost Clowney this last offseason. I think you could make an argument Clowney was outside of Hamilton their second most important player, or outside of Hamilton and Roquan, their second most important player on defense. Queen's out. They're putting the young Clemson linebacker in there, and he played a really good game today. But that's another young guy in there, a Jabo in there off of the edge. I think some replacing parts in the secondary a little bit and trying to get that locked in. And then they also lost not just Mike Macdonald, but there was a couple other coaches. The guy went out to Tennessee, and another one of the assistants from there that went that direction of it. And so there's just a little bit of, from the Ravens standpoint, of probably having to kind of refine that identity. And that this is what you'd expect when you lose a coach as good as Mike Macdonald. But I think that's part of the nice part of bringing Macdonald in here, Yalin, is that he's really good at helping to establish this identity and how he teaches his scheme and his approach to teaching. It's part of what the players have touched on, I think, many times over throughout this training camp period, is his ability to get this stuff across and get everybody on the same page. And I think it's also, Yalin, why we saw the defense play so well in the preseason, even though they were running so much vanilla concepts, is that that's a little bit of a feeling for me of buy-in and understanding of what's going on, and a good indicator that this thing will probably have a little bit more, I'm not going to say seamless transition here, but a little bit more, less of the expectation that this thing should be either sluggish or tons of bumps in the road every other half mile. 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. I don't foresee that.
Right. So I think that sums it up pretty well. I'm not worried about this team lacking in identity after what I saw in the preseason.
No, I'm not either. So I just think it's more that stuff with the Ravens there, y'all, and where they're on the road, opening real tough game against a Kansas City Chiefs team that's going to probably win 13 games this year.
Yeah.
And they'll still be a good team this year. They got things they got to clean up, but it's hard to overcome that.
And right now, I think you kind of have to say that Chiefs team kind of owns them. They must feel like they own them because they have that personnel on their defense that can just take away all the stuff that they want to do really well. I know they lost McDuffie, right?
No, it's the other guy they lost. It's corner, but it was the other kid I'm spacing on.
Yeah.
Went to the Titans, I believe.
Right. Yeah, he got traded to the Titans. Yeah, I can't remember who it was now, but I mean, that's just going to be a tough game for them. Sneed. Yes, there we go. Thank you. Beautiful. But yeah, it's a tough game. You're playing on the road too, by the way.
Football is a game of matchups. That's a big thing they always like to say, is it's sometimes not just about who has the more talent. It's also about styles and matchups and how they face off. If you have a Miami offense that goes up against a defense that's big and sluggish, to use your words there, y'all, and I love sluggish. Love that word. You get a big sluggish defense up against the Mike Macdonald offense. Holy hell, that defense is in for a long day probably. And that's where things can kind of work with that, I think, a little bit on that front of it. Like to Brennan's point in this, Chiefs just kind of have a little bit of the Ravens number. They're a bad matchup for the Chiefs, or for the Ravens, I think, in a lot of ways.
Right.
Thank you, though, Yalin. Appreciate you for the donation. Janeth Kumar, thank you for the $5 dono. Appreciate you for that as well. Thank you very much. Lamar can't keep up all the rushing with that body frame. They'll have to use Henry and the receivers more and better than today.
Yeah, Lamar's not going to finish this season. I think that the way, I mean, there was that one play tonight, but right before the failed fourth down where he like lowered his shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one or not, but that's not going to fly.
I saw one where he's running out of bounds and all he had to do was run out of bounds and he still lowered his shoulder and finished the run on an out of bounds run where he's going out of the thing. And that's why I say it feels like he's going backwards this year a little bit, because last year he developed pocket passer a little bit more, still used his legs, but he found that perfect balance. Whereas now it seems like he's going back to more of the vintage Lamar, where it's going to be a bunch of him trying to run 10 to 15 times a game and not as much going through his reads and doing the progression stuff he was doing last year. And I don't get it. Even the rushing attack, I didn't understand today. For instance, you're banging with Henry. You kind of forget the running game for a big part of this game. I think some of it was that the Chiefs were running the stack boxes. This is the whole problem with the throwing deep, Brendan, is the stack boxes can help stop the run. And you end up getting back to that purpose of, I've got to hit you deep over the top. It ends up being like, the way this logically will be deduced as an offense is we're going to get down to the solution of this. And the solution is I have to hit you over the top with those stack boxes there like that. So you'd see Lamar walk down to the line of scrimmage. He's got 8 men on the line. He's got 8 men right there in front of him. So what does he do, Brendan? If it's a run call, do you stay with that run call? Or with your press coverage on the outside with your receiver, you got to go to the 9 call, right? Okay, run your 9, but then you can't throw that 9 over the top then to it. You can't fit it into that space. And that's where I think they couldn't go away from. They had to go away a little bit from the run in this game. But why don't you use Justice Hill at all in this game as a runner? A little faster than Henry, a little better out of those read option kind of looks that Lamar wants to run. They didn't do any of that today with him. He had like 1 carry in this game. And I thought that was another part that was estranged from the offensive coordinator in his approach in this one.
Yeah, I think Justice Hill was their leading receiver for most of the game.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, likely and Bateman got over him by the end. But for most of that game, Hill was like being used as a receiver exclusively. Yeah,
kind of strange because he's that big play kind of running back for them that can be that Devon A-Chain or the guy that we're going to play this week, Jaleel Salele, or whatever. I can't say his name exactly right, but similar kind of back where you're not trying to get him a high volume of carries, but just let him loose on about 5 or 6 and they can bust ones for you. I thought the Ravens just kind of bailed on the running game quite a bit today. And I agree with you, Janeth. I think that Lamar's been too long in this to expect that he's going to hold up for a 200 rush season again here, using his body like that. If you got 200 carries and 115 of those carries end up with you sliding or running out of bounds, that's one thing. If you have 200 carries on your body and 145 of them are car crashes, how is what is he now, 28, 29-year-old Lamar with all of the carries on that body going to sustain that over the course of a season?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end too well.
No, I don't think so either. And it's weird that they're backtracking. Like they even said on the telecast, he lost 10 pounds. And you're like, oh, so he's trying to run more. That's a great instinct. Okay. Janet with another $5. Thank you for the double dip there, Janet. Also going to my first ever NFL game this weekend at Lumen. Give me all the tips and go Hawks.
Oh, that's pretty good. Well, tips.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, I haven't been to a game in a while, I'll be perfectly honest. Last game I went to was the NFC title game against the Packers. And it was a miserable experience, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it can be, especially if it's cold, it can be a bit tough in that stadium.
Yeah. I remember my dad left the car for like 20 seconds. And during that exact 20-second window, there was this monsoon that just came in. And when he got back in his car, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to the stadium. I am so wet. I don't want to leave this car now. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it was coming in buckets there that day, and I think that's the first thing we'd probably tell you on this, Jonathan, is you can always unpeel off the clothing. So layer, and then you can unpeel off because you don't want to be cold in that stadium. And it can get, if it's the right kind of day, even as we're in the late stage, it should be warm and great. But if it's in the late stages, you never know when you get that kind of chilly day where it runs through, and it can be a little bit brutal, doing it. Get down there early. Traffic's going to be crazy, but you want to get down there and be able to kind of, I know there's no tailgating, but just go down and check out the sites. They got the drum band usually out there pounding away. It's kind of it's got a nice vibe, get you in the mood, get you ready to roll. And, yeah, everything else is pretty fluid and easy once you're down there. They do a good job of keeping the lines moving and getting out. You need some food and nothing else, I think, aside from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's really all there is to say. Just try to have a good time. And I think the weather this week is going to be pretty good, so you're not going to run into the problem that I did.
Yeah, because it's got that wind coming off those waters, and in the winter there, it's just like, oh, geez, we are right down on the water, aren't we? Yes, we are, right on top of the ocean here. Like, oh, God. But you should be okay on that, Janet, to his point. So just get an extra jacket. You'll be good. And then get down there early. That'd be the main thing. Don't cut it short. Make sure you have plenty of time so you're not stressed running to your seat at the end. And it's kind of fun to watch him, just even if you're down, if you guys especially close ticket, watch him, warming up on the field. You get a real feel for, kind of the size of guys and all that stuff, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thank you, though, Janet, for the double dip. Appreciate you for that. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5. Says, if our offensive line plays like the Ravens' offensive line, we're in for a rough night. Face, fushai, poop shape. I'll say that face, red, droopy eyes. How do you say that word? I can never say that word. I always want to pronounce it wrong.
I'm not sure. I don't know how to pronounce it.
You were going to give it a try and you stopped it.
Yeah. Fuchsia.
I think that's it. I think it's fuchsia. That's actually, I think, right. I think that sounds right. I always want to pronounce it with the IA and the IA, but that's not right. Right. Offensive line for the Ravens is reassembling some things. The Jets came in and plucked two of their guys, John Simpson and Morgan Moses, the ethereal one, the man that'll play forever, I think.
Yeah, they're starting Rosengarten, aren't they?
Yeah, starting Rosengarten. And look, it's not very fair for Roger, man. You're going to go Chris Jones. Like, I don't know if you saw the moment. Chris Jones, like, looking at his fellow defensive lineman, he, like, points at him. And they go over to Roger. It's like, I want to dust this young kid up. Like, that's a tough call for him in his rookie start in Arrowhead. You're a right tackle. So you're going into the week going, all right, I might get Chris a couple snaps here. And Chris is like, I'm going to be in here all day on you. And there was a couple brutal snaps in there with Roger, but bless the kid. What's he gonna do? He's holding on for dear life with that, and so they are kind of trying to rework that through. Still feels like Linderbaum's he's not exactly been Creed Humphrey 2.0 for them quite yet.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Creed Humphrey needs to learn how to throw a shotgun snap. That's driving me crazy. Every other shotgun snap is skimming the ground.
Yeah, he's got to get that thing up. I don't know what it is. He's just such a low center of gravity or what it is, but
you just practice that 500 times a day. You're going to get it right eventually, right?
You'd think so, but he does make Patrick sometimes work for it a little bit on that side of it, just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm surprised about Linderbaum. I thought he was a generational center prospect.
Yeah, he still might develop here, and I don't think he's bad.
No, not at all.
I think he was. It's John Michael Schmitz, I was thinking, was the one that was really struggling of the recent centers we looked at. He's the one last year that was like, ooh. But Linderbaum's been all right. It just hasn't come fully to that spot yet. I don't think quite of where you get a guy like Creed, but he's a young player. He might still get there yet. Still, I think, a good player, but they're developing. They're coming together. They're trying to bring it together, and you lose two starting parts like that over an offseason. Guys Simpson wasn't good for them, and Morgan was okay, but they were steady Eddie.
Right, and again, the value of an offensive line is how well they play together, not so much how they play individually.
Yeah. I do think Staley didn't. There's times even in this game they were having to give Staley help. And I'm like, isn't that supposed to be your franchise left tackle on an island? You're like, why are you giving him so much help?
Well, they hit him with the 3 illegal formation penalties on that first drive. That probably got in his head, right?
I know. And I see some people are not understanding that penalty, by the way. If the offensive lineman's up and down like this, and he's in front of the belt line of the guard, that's how it gets called. So people were looking at Jawan Taylor I hate Jawan Taylor's false start crap as much as anybody. It should be called. He should be hammered for it. This is the reason the guy's the most penalized tackle in the sport last year. But what Jawan Taylor does is he sticks that foot back and then he leans forward. He's past the belt of the guard leaning forward. Ronnie Taylor upright. The other guy, Jawan Taylor, forward in front to the belt line of the guard. So the guard, that's not going to get called unless the guy's upright and he's essentially behind the belt line there that's going in front of him, which some people are struggling with. But yeah, you got to adjust that eventually. You got to go, okay, I got to get scoot up and get my stance up there on this. And I'm glad the NFL's cracking down on that, by the way. I don't like that. I don't like that jump step crap either. Like, no, play it legitimate. No cheating tackles. I know it's hard, tough. Deal with it.
Offense is too easy to play right now anyway. We don't need to give them unfair advantages.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad they're doing that. Play it true. Stop pushing the line. Stop pushing the line, offensive lineman. But thank you, Jeffrey. I think it'll be a bit of work in progress this year for that Ravens offensive line. And I like Roger there long term. He was a good tackle, but rookie first start, it's tough draw there on that one. That wasn't easy. You get a Carl Loftus for most of your plays, and then sprinkling in of Chris Jones. Gee, thank you. Ethan, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, had the 21st birthday this week. Go Hawks. Hashtag BNB. Well, happy 21st birthday, Ethan. Let's go, man. Let's go.
Pretty
Congrats.
Good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
That is a good one. That's a fun one. Hopefully you went out there and enjoyed yourself. Enjoy yourself completely. Eric Michelet. I gave you the French pronunciation. Hopefully it was the right pronunciation, Eric. He says, join in late. What are your guys' score predictions for the game? That's a good time. We're still got the
we haven't talked about the defense yet. We haven't made score predictions yet, and I haven't really thought about it yet. Okay. I'd go with something like 24-13.
It's pretty much where I was been at for leading up to this game. The 24-13 score sounds about right to me as well, Brendan. So if not that, 27-17. Something like that, Eric. I think that we've got a 10-point win here. I think it's a fairly comfortable win. I don't think we blow them out. There's probably a couple plays in there Denver's able to get on our guys and we'll be talking about the defense in a second here, but a couple plays they'll be able to get into our defense on. But I think that it'll be a pretty clean game, and offensively we'll be able to get after that defense. So 24, 27 points, find some good holes in the running game, and a game that I think will be pretty firmly in our control. You get into probably the depths of the third quarter and you're feeling pretty good about it. Not that we have it for certainty, but that you feel, okay, we've got pretty good control of this game. We've handled through. It's like, sorry.
If we put Denver in a position where they need to throw the ball, it's hard to imagine them finding a way to win.
Yeah, agreed. They're going to need their running game to make this go. And if you can take that away from them, I think they're going to get sunk. They might hit you for some stuff, but there'll be some interceptions in there. There'll be some bad plays from a rookie quarterback in his first start. And I think you'll be able to take advantage of that. And first start history, Brendan, by the way, not too good when I was looking it up as far as recent history goes. Ran some of the numbers on it and try to bring it up if I can find it. But it's definitely working on our favor history-wise on this one as far as that goes. So hopefully we can keep it rolling here. But we'll go with those predictions. I think we both feel pretty good about that being where this one lands at.
Something like that, yeah.
10, 11-point lead. Thank you, though, Eric. I appreciate you for that. Hopefully I didn't butcher your last name. Ender, thank you for the $10 donation. Ender says, I unsubbed from Brandon because of lack of content the last couple of months, but damn, you're smart. Got a resub. Go Hawks. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the $10 donation, Ender, and subbing back up to the channel.
Yeah, it's not easy to make content in June and July. Ask me how I know.
And I do have Ender. I created a Clips channel. So what I have been doing is on my Clips channel, getting daily content out onto the Clips channel for the very reason of just trying to keep, some content rolling and keep that thing going. So I was kind of buffing up that a little bit on the side here this off season. But as Brendan says, I'm very much against doing much of stuff that gets into clickbait stuff or just that isn't content that isn't got the meat on the bone or something I really want to talk about. So it was a quiet off season, Brendan, right? I mean, we didn't have a lot of you didn't have a lot of contract extensions. You didn't have a lot of, active trades necessarily. It was kind of like our roster was kind of locked in by mid-May and we were going to roll along with it. Connor Williams being about the real addition.
And that's where you want to be, right? You don't want to be like the Dallas Cowboys where you've got, is CeeDee Lamb going to get paid? Is Micah Parsons going to get paid? Is Dak Prescott going to get paid? And then just have every thought you have about the team be, 100 different angles on those 3 different things.
Yeah. So, but do please check out the Clips channel there, as I definitely am getting that content out there daily, because I know that people like that daily content stuff. So keep it rolling there. And by the way, folks, do hit the like button, and please, if you're not on either side of this, do make sure you sub up to both Brendan and my channel. I was looking for that stat, Brendan. I can't find the damn thing, but something like 12 and in the last 10 years, like 12 and 42 or something like that, or 48. So just really rough stats. And I should have distilled it further, because I think if you looked at here we go, Brendan. It's so we've got the last 10 years. I did the Chat GPT look at this. So it's 213 to 222. So I don't have the recent last year, but it's still, I think, pretty good marker for us to look at here. 18 wins, 48 losses.
2013 to 2022.
2022. Right.
Okay.
18
first
wins.
Start of your career.
First start rookie quarterback of their career.
Okay. I'm trying to see how many of the wins that I can remember. I'm trying to think of the rookie quarterbacks in that time, because I know Jameis Winston didn't win his first start. Sam Darnold did. I remember that. I think Mariota won his first start.
I think so. Yeah.
CJ Stroud's not included, right? Because he was 2023.
Right. He wouldn't be included on this one.
Yeah. So, no, Andrew Luck lost his first start, actually. And Andrew Luck was 2012. Someone in chat said Andrew Luck. I remember Andrew Luck lost his first start to the Bears. I remember that game.
Yeah. The thing I was thinking about, too, with this, Brendan, is if you had to wager to guess, 18 wins, 48 losses. Of those 18 wins for those rookie quarterbacks, what do you think the percentage would be about of them at home on those wins?
Yeah. Most of them. Yeah, you definitely say pretty significant majority of it. And I mean, I know that Broncos, and I believe me, I've seen them all over X lately, all over X. They're feeling themselves right now, but let's not forget, Bo Nix was QB6 in this draft. We're not even talking about QB1 or QB2. We're talking about QB6 here. And, you liked him a little bit more than I did, but neither of us were crazy about Bo Nix, I don't think. So, this isn't even one of the better QBs over the last 10 years.
No, he's a good prospect. I think he went to the perfect ideal area for him for Payton. If this is one of those guys, Brendan, that if there's quarterbacks that you go, there's certain teams this guy can't go to, it's not going to work, or you're setting him on the pathway for failure if you put him onto this team with that coach. He went to the right coach for what he's going to want his quarterback to do and to develop him, I think, Brendan. And so I will say that. But look, he's not necessarily like what Jaden Daniels is going to do at times, I think, for Washington, or what Caleb might do, where they can just sometimes do some of that single-handed stuff, in the back, just improvisation, making it up on the fly, finding a way, leaning on some sort of super uber trait to get them by as they're trying to learn the game.
Right. And I agree. I think that if Bo Nix is going to find success anywhere, it's in Denver with Sean Payton. I think that's a great match, but he still would not be, if I were to make a list of best rookie quarterbacks over the last 10 years, I don't think he would I don't think he'd make the top 20 or top 25.
I don't think he would either for me either. And so he's a good guy. I think that, this is a good time right now to kind of bend to the defense. And Ender, thank you for resubbing up, man. I really appreciate you doing that. And thank you for the $10 don't know. Eric says with the another $5, another double dip donation. Eric, thank you. He says, Michelet was perfect pronunciation of the name. Didn't mean to rush the show. No, you're all good, man. I appreciate your donation and support to the channel, man. You guys allow us to do this. So, I'm a historically known man for butchering both the first and the last names. I'm working on it, trying to get better. Like Brendan's got me beat on the Polynesian pronunciations. Like he's on it. I can't do any of that. So I'm holding on for dear life on every vowel. But I can do some of the French
I miss
stuff.
some of them pretty badly. Some of them are not good.
Yeah, it's rough. There's a lot of names coming at us. It's a lot of first and last names, and there's a lot of trickery in those pronunciations and syllables and all that. But Eric, thank you for the $5, and you can rush the show anytime, man. Anytime. Appreciate you for that. Problem. Well, let's pivot it over here to the defensive side of the ball here in playing that same Bo Nix. I think first got to kind of backtrack a little bit, because you touched on really the important part here defensively, and maybe as much of a most important part from my perspective and coming into this game on what you want to concentrate on, making sure you don't allow this to beat you. The running game for the Broncos. Payton is known for having sometimes not just the bell cow, but the three-headed attack. Go back to his New Orleans days, it would be Bush, but Pierre Thomas and like Ivory or something. He had like that combination in there that he could roll, and he'd run through all three of them. So you'd have different skill set guys hitting you. So defensively, you could get kind of hit off guard at times just off of how they'd run it. And he's got a diversified run game. He'll do like Grubb. He'll hit you outside. He'll hit you inside. He'll spread you out. He'll run power. He'll run some of the more, read option-y, I think, concepts a bit. You see it the same way on this with this defense and this overall game of it, where I look at it as such a big major factor.
Yeah, that's the way they're going to want to try to control this game through the ground. And looking at it, I'm not sure if they have the right running backs to do it, because I don't know if Javante's ever really going to be back. It was a pretty bad injury he had. That could be something that just kind of takes a little notch off of you forever, and you never get the notch back, maybe.
Yeah, some guys don't.
Yeah. But that is a legitimate run blocking offensive line he's got. That is a good run blocking offensive line. Quinn Miners might be a top 3 right guard in the game. Mike McGlinchey's a really good run blocker. And, you got Ben Powers too. Ben Powers is a good run blocker. So that is probably the concern of this game. They run the ball, they get ahead of you, they can keep running the ball, keep running the ball, and they never have to make Bo Nix do anything risky at all. They can just let him stay on script. That's where things can get dicey in this game, because I feel pretty good about my cornerbacks against that team's receivers. Again, they threw Tim Patrick away for nothing because he wasn't part of their future, and they didn't really care if he would be able to be a little bit better than a guy like Josh Reynolds or Marvin Mims this year, because who cares about this year?
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
Overall, that's going to be where this game goes wrong. If the game goes wrong, it'll be because we can't stop the run and they're allowed to just run the ball the whole game.
Agreed. I think too, especially the RPO game stuff really stands out to me, which is something that you seem to see a lot of NFL teams for rookie quarterbacks lean into a lot. We saw this with Anthony Richardson with the Colts. I think that Bryce Young did a lot of this stuff with Carolina last year too. Get him in shotgun, give him some, just a sort of a triple option thing. 1, 2, 3, go through it. Is the open up for a pass on the slant? Slant's not there. Put it in the running back's belly. Is the back got look like it has an open? If he doesn't, keep it, go. Read the defensive end. Simplify the game down for the quarterback. At the same point in time, I've heard people say about this defense with Mike Macdonald's defense, when you get them out of the 3-4 look, which we've talked about is something that's going to be what you're going to see a majority of the time from the Seahawks defense, is them out of 3-4 looks, them in a 4-man box. It will be, again, a little bit of that weird, odd 4-man front at times when it's not a stacked box, meaning you have RPO, so you have a read option look there at times, and you're going to run dual blocks on the front side of the play. So dual blocks at the point of attack, meaning you're going to have 2 blockers who are going to hit those 2 defensive tackles right at that spot there with the RPO game. Your edges have to hold. They can't come down and help out downhill. And so there's a lot of times then where you're getting some nice, easy forward movement there at the front of the line of scrimmage. And if you have a plow back like Javonte Williams, your points stand. I don't want to completely agree with you on the, you don't know if he's going to ever really get full back point, but how he's built as a tackle breaker, as a grinder kind of back, you give him that guy that again gets some of that easy yards up front with those duo blocks where those guys have got to really hold up in there and kind of wait for the cavalry to have enough time to arrive on the back end to clear their gaps. That's where I'm going to be watching for that in that game a little bit. This is going to be pushing forward to Brendan when we play a team like the Rams, who I think have structured their offense this year to do the similar stuff. We're going to come downhill, hit you in the A and the B gap. We're going to hit you with duo blocks at the point of attack. And we're just going to, it's sometimes going to be the 3 yards and 4 yards and 5 yards in a cloud of dust, but we can wear you down over the course of the game and we can lean on it. We can put ourselves into 3rd and shorts. Because when I look at this game, from my standpoint, this defensively, I want to get Bo Nix into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. I want to get him into those places where it's not going to be a quick, easy read to get to the first down. And he's got to hold that ball for a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have Bo Nix trying to fit in a tight window throw against Woolen or Witherspoon. But you got to force him into that spot, because you might see Denver's offense be run kind of like the Michigan Wolverines offense last year, where if they can run the ball, they will. They'll just run it and run it and run it and run it and run it, because why would they do anything else? Yeah. And I do wonder if Denver's going to be kind of like that this year. They don't have good receivers. Their starting tight end is like some guy. Is it Dulich or is it Troutman?
He's 2. No, it's Trautman, Dulich.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're right.
So I do think that this Denver team is going to be running the ball a lot. And I think it's fair to be a little bit concerned here because I think the previous super chatter mentioned, we don't have a big nose tackle in there right now, except for Hankins, who probably isn't good for more than 20 snaps a game at this point. But at the same time,
maybe run more. Maybe this game be more of a game than almost any other this season. You run a 3-4.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to do that. I saw a lot of those 2-man fronts and 4-man fronts in preseason. I would love to see legitimate 3-man fronts in this game with the 2 edge rushers coming up as well. I would love to see that. It's an interesting first test for Mike Macdonald in a way, because I know that this should be one of the lesser offenses in the league. So in that sense, it should be like an easier battle for him. But it's also an interesting test to see how much he's willing to modify his plan to account for the opponent that he's playing, which is something that one of the big reasons why we got so frustrated with Carroll at the end there. He didn't seem like he ever adjusted to the opponent. He just did what he always did and hoped that it worked.
And let's face it, with Macdonald, he's got to shore up the run defense. This is a problem with what you've been running in previous seasons, and the new scheme can maybe help and all that too, but this is a point of where the Denver Broncos can be strong. This is where you have been a little bit weaker in recent years. So it's why, for me, it really drives to a key defensively in stopping this team, Brennan, because you make this game so much easier on that rookie quarterback. If you allow him to be able to lean on that, that's a rookie quarterback's best friend is a just strong ground game that he can go after. And Broncos can hit you with that grinder and grind you with Javonte, grind. Audric Estime, the kid out of Notre Dame, another grinder, another bull in the China shop type back. And then they hit you with the Jaleel kid, who's really fast, and he's the sort of the game breaker. He's the big playmaker, and so they can kind of combo that up and catch you off guard with it. And that's where you'll have to begin in this game. Definitely it's a definite game of earning the right to rush the passer. If that's a tried and true rule the defenses often tell you about. We got to stop the run first, got to earn the right to rush the passer. This game will absolutely be that way, because the first start for a rookie quarterback on the road, that coach is going to want to make his passing attempts minimized down as far as absolutely possible. And you've got to upend that. You got to find a way to shake that up and not allow that to happen.
Yeah. I think that runs it down really well. Audric Estime was a guy we talked about in the offseason. I think that he was, other than maybe the Wisconsin guy who was like 270 pounds or something,
Braylon Allen,
the most legitimate power back in this draft. And Estime might be a better player, honestly. So I liked him. I think we both liked Blake Watson. He was a lot of fun as well. So they've got some running backs to throw at you. And they do have that really good blocking offensive line. I didn't even mention Garrett Bowles, by the way. He's really good. Yeah.
No, they're good in pass. You mentioned run blocking, good in pass protection. So they give you both accounts there. And a running game and a strong offensive line. This is the thing that will help a young quarterback out. And that's why we've got to, in my opinion, this is where you 3-4 defense, maybe leaning a little bit more into that. If you're going to run stack boxes this year, Brendan, if that's going to be a bit of a somewhat centerpiece of what you do, this would be a game for me where you would really run it. Get me into situations where I'm forcing Bo Nix to try to go to those one-on-one opportunities on the outside. Oh, I'm going to throw a go ball against Tariq Woolen with Cortland Sutton, one-on-one on the outside. I'll take my chances on that. I got Witherspoon in the slot. On that, I'll take my chances on that, and then you, in a lot of ways, can compound those things at the line of scrimmage in a lot of ways, like the Ravens did tonight, what the Chiefs did to the Ravens tonight defensively, where you compound everything with the run game first, and then you're also making the quarterback feel tremendously uneasy when he's going to be setting up to pass, that he feels like the pressure is coming there. And it doesn't have to be that you're bringing blitzes necessarily, though. I'd say even offer on that too, Brendan, where I'd say if you're going to end out this season at like the 17th highest blitz rate, this might be a game where you find yourself in sort of that almost top 10-ish territory, because I want to bring some house looks on this kid. I want to test this kid out. I want to force him to process and make him think. I don't want to allow him to have his first read opened up. I want to completely confuse him as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, and you look at Bo Nix, his whole career has been about keeping turnovers down. His whole career has been, I'm not turning the ball over. Sean Payton's whole offensive scheme is about putting my quarterbacks in situations where they don't have to turn the ball over. So if you want turnovers in this game, you're going to have to do something to force it. You're going to have to really work for that turnover opportunity. And I think they can do it, but you're not going to do it by just sitting back in zone and waiting for Bo Nix to try to do something that he really, really shouldn't do, force the ball into a really tight window. You're going to have to trick him.
Agreed. And I think he's going to be instructed at times, well, just take the check down, take the 3 yards, take the easy play. Don't try to force much. When I have you rip it, it'll be on a play where we've constructed it for you to rip it, where we've set the play up. And that's a good thing. That's a part of what I think Payton does well, is constructing a passing attack that, can script stuff up. I think, for instance, in cutting dig routes against our defense, those crossers against this defense, those can be things that I think that he can find some openings with. But of course, those are longer developing routes. So the pass protection has to hold up. It's where I come back to, again, stack boxes, some more blitzes in there. You don't give him the time on those routes to have them to develop, to hit those routes. And those have been problem routes for us in the old defense, Brendan. But of course, we couldn't get the pressure to take away the time it took for those routes to open up. I go with an in-cutting route. I got to go up the field, then I got to drive across the field. I go to crossing route. I got to go all the way across the field this way. It's a long developing route. So you get to the quarterback or speed his clock up before those routes can click in. You can eliminate them, and it has nothing then to do with the coverage on the back end. It's just eliminated. Dark Hollow, thank you for the $20 donation. That is very kind of you, man. I really, really appreciate you. That is amazing support you guys as ever on the channel tonight. We really appreciate you guys for that. He says, I appreciate both of you and the content you create all year. Who leads the Hawks in interceptions this year?
I mean, the smartest bet is probably just Woolen, right? He's got the best hands back there. He's the one with the most obvious ball hawk skills. I now feel fairly confident that he's going to start the whole season. I was wondering how the Woolen Macdonald relationship would go, but so far so good.
They seem to be sold on him very early in this process. It was when I, like you, thought there was going to be a bit of let's observe this kid and what he does and doesn't do and where he's at. But it seems like you heard how Leslie Frazier talked about him in the interview with Behind the Sticks, that they are completely in on him, having him move around in coverage. This stuff speaks, I think, to their comfortability with him as a player and where he's going and what he's capable of. There is also no doubt about it that even though last year you can maybe ding a little bit of Woolen for the tackling stuff, you can't ding him for the coverage stuff. It remained there. He had a lot of just near miss interceptions on top of a couple he was able to reel in. Brendan mentions the ball skills, which are, I think, as good as you'll probably find in the NFL from the corner position, along with that catch radius. And I think he's on top of this, Dark Hollow, he's going to be put in man coverage situations. And I think we're going to have quarterbacks at times. What you saw with Macdonald's defense is its ability to create turnovers by forcing those turnovers. It wasn't that your corner jumped a route. It's that you sped the quarterback's clock up with the pressure or the appearance of pressure, and then the quarterback threw the ball a hair earlier than he wanted to throw it. There wasn't that separation there that he thought they'd be. They weren't able to do the route read off of, on the same page as the receiver. They're not reading the same thing, and then it's almost thrown directly to the defender. I mean, how many Geno Stone interceptions last year, Brendan, were thrown basically right into his arms? And it's because you speed that clock up. And I think with him in man coverage, there'll be times where a quarterback's going to try to throw it on Woolen or even on Witherspoon or Trey Brown at times where those guys they're pretty much close in coverage, and he's trying to throw that trust throw in there and hope his receiver can get it. And I, again, like my chances, much like this week with Gordon Sutton, Dark Hollow, I like my chances with Drake Woolen in those kind of matchups. I think he can win those kind of opportunities, and that's kind of right in his wheelhouse, quite frankly.
Right. Witherspoon doesn't seem to have the greatest hands, so I don't know if he's going to come away with a lot of interceptions, and I don't think we have any safeties that are going to be a big time ball hawk. I think that they're bringing things to the table that are a little more nuanced than that. So I think it has to be Woolen.
Yeah, I'd go with Woolen on this one. I think Julian Love will get a couple and Witherspoon will get a couple. I do agree with you. I don't know if Witherspoon's got the greatest of hands, but where he'll get the same kind of opportunities, I think Woolen will get, because this is the other thing with this is if he is traveling with the number one wide receiver, there are going to be those teams that are just going to try to then target, because they just want to target their number one wide receiver. They don't want to just be like, oh, Woolen's on him all game, we'll just ignore him now. And so that's, again, more opportunities then for Woolen to potentially get those interceptions in moments that he maybe didn't get as much an opportunity in other prior years. Dark Hollow, though, you're the man. Thank you for the $20 donation. That is very, very kind of you, and appreciate you watching and you guys' support throughout all this year and what we do, man. We love what we do here.
Absolutely.
Eric with another $10 donation, triple dono off the rip here from Eric as well. Thank you for that, Eric. Says, I can't imagine a defensive specialist like Macdonald who wouldn't make stopping the run priority number one. If Denver runs it all over us, I'd be very concerned, win or lose.
That was part of the problem that Baltimore had last year in the second half of the year. To my recollection, their run defense did slip compared to the first half of the year. So if that's something that you're looking at Baltimore last year to try to learn from, it would be that Macdonald struggled a little bit to fix his team's run defense. So, then again, I feel like run defense in the NFL right now is being deprioritized. So I don't think that's a hallmark of a bad defense at all. I think the problem you run into is when your run defense is abysmal, which is what we've been the last 2 years. But you can have a mediocre run defense and still win 13, 14 games in this league right now.
Indeed. It is a thing that's important to a degree on it, Eric. I think to Brendan's point on that, where it's something that you don't want to be bad. You don't want to be league worst. You don't want to be in that real awful place of it because teams will just lean on it. But it's okay if you're just around that even average area of it. This week's a little bit, I think, special though to Eric's point on this, and that this is also the team that will specifically use this method at the forefront of how they're trying to beat you. Where I think most teams aren't going to lean into the run offensively as much in how they try to beat you. They'll do it. For a lot of teams, it's a necessary evil. We'll run the ball 30% of the time, but with this Broncos team, back to your point on this, Eric, is going to be that they are going to try to make this how they lead in this game. And so we've got to stomp it out with that. To your question, to your point on this, and thank you again for the donation. We do have to remember too, with his defense, that it starts with those hard edges. The team has done a good job, tactically speaking, in how they've set the stage for this already of, we're not just going to run, let's say, necessarily on this, Brendan. We're not just going to run Boye Mafe and Uchenna Nwosu as our outside edges early downs all the time. It's going to be a lot of Mike Morris and Draymond Jones as your edges on early downs, because hard edges are big forefront of what he wants done. So he's already at times, I think, shown that he's going to put the personnel out there to stack you up on that front of it to make sure that he can stop that run, that you're not going to get that light box. Part of the reason that Darrell Taylor is no longer here is because of what he was not able to do in stopping the run, I think. In fact, that's maybe the main reason. Yeah. On top of the money's a bit of it too. But I would say that he's going to do a good job of making this a centerpiece and understanding as well coming in here that this has, as Brendan just said, been an abysmal point for us coming into this season, that this is one of the big things he's got to kind of clean up if he wants to hope to turn this defense around.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Byron Murphy on the edge a little bit this year. I know that sounds a little bit wild and out there, but
I agree. Leonard Williams has been talked about playing 6 different spots on that defensive line. Another guy that will be moved around all over the place. And so I think that this is being done not for pass rush, not because we can run all of these great exotic blitzes out of it. I think it's being done because of the fact that they want to make sure they can set those hard edges. They want to make sure that they're going to be immobile on that front four when it is a front four up there. Okay, right. We only got 4 guys for your 5 or 6, but these are all big, immovable guys that you're not going to be able to move, and you're going to have to dedicate 2 blockers if you're going to hope to move them. And now our linebackers can run free. Now our safeties can come up and help, and we can do a better job of shoring that part of the game up.
Yeah. But again, I do want to stress here that the goal is not necessarily to make our run defense elite. It's to make it not terrible. That's been the problem the last couple of years. It's been so bad. The run defense has single-handedly cost us games, which in the modern NFL, that's hard. It's hard to have a run defense so bad it actually costs you games.
Yeah. No, it's the teams that can just, lean on that stuff. And when they were doing it with us, a couple of those games, it's just, we can lean on this. We don't have to go away from it. We know you can't stop it. There's no adjustment you have to make. Some of that came down to at times in the last couple of years to not having the talent there to do it. Some of it was the personnel deficiencies as well. It's a combination deal, but it is the thing to watch for this week, Eric. I think in trying to win this game or to not, and that if we come down to whether we win this game or not, I think you're going to look at it as, did we stop the run or not? Did we keep the run game in control? Or do we allow that running game to go for over 200 yards collectively? Nick's run for 45 and Javonte run for another 115 and then Jaleel another 65. Did you let that happen? If that happens, that's a loss probably. So this is really the big key for this particular game. I agree with you, Brendan. Not every week would I feel this way, but I do think in this particular week, it's one that really does stand out where you say, this has got to be one where we make this a focal point of what we're trying to do defensively walking into it. Thank you, Eric. Thank you again, man, for all of those donos and support. Appreciate you for that. Addison Shelble Thank you for the $5 donation. Says, I'm thrilled that we don't have to worry about the complete and utter BS soft zone Carroll era philosophy this season. I feel, dare I say, optimistic.
Yeah, it feels like there's something to hope for now beyond just like in previous years, I would just hope for an okay defense. Now it feels like you can actually hope for like a good or a great defense again. It's nice.
Addison, me and Brendan were doing game previews last year by the end of the year. And Brendan would just start, as we were trying to say, and much of like the matchup we're talking about now and what you're going to do from a chess match standpoint in this game, he would sort of say, well, what's the point? And what we were running into a lot of times in analyzing this team in the past 2 years was a team that was telling you you're going to go away from the soft zone stuff. You're going to go away from some of the stuff that's held us back defensively in recent years. And we were watching it not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we were then saying, well, we can't really analyze this and tell you guys, okay, this week we're going to tighten the zones. This week we're going to run a lot more man concepts. This week we're going to blitz more. This week this is going to happen, or this would be the way that we can counter this, because we knew that counter wasn't going to come, that there was no real feasible way. Even if it was as straightforward a counter as you could find to utilize, we weren't going to utilize it because we were going to fall back on those concepts that had carried and held the day here for many, many years. And you're right to be optimistic now, because you are turning this on its ear. You're not merely sort of softly pivoting sort of halfway. You have gone the complete opposite direction here with the approach in this new defense. And I think it's part of the reason why not only you have that optimism, Addison, but I think there's a reinvigoration of the fan base in general right now, where there was a little bit more of a stagnation here in recent years and how they were feeling because of that, because you just were seeing a lack of adjustment.
Like, I felt like the Seahawks fan base, at least the ones that watch my channel, just kind of tuned out after the Ravens game last year. I think they lost interest and they didn't care that much anymore. And I cannot imagine where Seahawks fans would be right now if not for the fact that we moved off of Carroll this offseason. Like, could you imagine going through this offseason? You don't even have that much draft capital. You've got the same coach you've had for the last 14 years. I think things would just be dead around here, because if it didn't happen last year, it was never going to happen. By which I mean Carroll adjusting his defense in a meaningful way. And I know that Carroll did technically change his defense the last couple of years, but in a very superficial and ultimately not very meaningful way. It was like basically like a paperwork thing more than anything. It's like when it's like in Casino, when Robert De Niro keeps changing the job he's applying for at the casino every 5 years, so it gets sent back to the bottom of the pile. Yeah, it's like that.
I agree. It totally was.
Yeah, so I think that if Carroll was still the coach, there would be very little excitement right now.
I agree. I think we both be in that same boat, wouldn't we, Brendan? I mean, I think both of us trying to cover the team and find a place of optimism for the upcoming season and hopefulness, it'd be tough to find it. For the same reason of you saying at the end of the year last year, why unpack this upcoming game for this specific spot of it with our defense to their offense? We know it's going to be run the same way. We know we predictably can tell what we're going to see in this game, and that's what is going to happen. And we're in the opposite place of it now. And part of the reason why there's a lot of not just hope for the future, but even this upcoming year where maybe we might be thinking more of new coach and all that other stuff. Well, you're throwing away things that have just been so long necessary to be fixed, as Carroll himself even acknowledged 2 years ago in that, like you said, the cosmetic like change you made at that time. We got to make this change. We've been arrogant in our ways. It's time for a new approach. And so glad to hear you're optimistic, Addison. You should be. I think the fan base is going to be real optimistic the more they get to see what Macdonald's bringing to play, because I think that we got ourselves a great coach. You've heard it from people that are not just locally in Washington, but you hear from across the landscape, the NFL people connected to the Ravens, connected to that coaching tree, connected to the Harbaughs, knowing Mike Macdonald in whatever way they may, and how they talk of him and how they speak about their confidence that he's going to be a success. And I think there's something to that. And it's part of why I've got such heavy optimism for this season.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thank you, though, Addison. Appreciate you. Eric, coming in with a fourth dono, man. Thank you for that donation. Appreciate you for that, Eric. Says, yes, thank you both for the analysis. I don't need us to be Legion of Boom good at stopping the run, but we need to set that edge.
Yeah. You got to be able to do a little something out there for sure. Again, like, you have to be really bad with your run defense to have it cost you games. And I can think of probably 5 games over the last 2 years where the run defense has been clearly the reason why the team has lost. Not easy to do.
It really isn't. And I don't know if there's another team over that time period, Brendan, that encountered games as much as we did that we ran into that being the reality of what you were facing. And it starts with the first setting the edge. Why? Because you eliminate outside runs, you eliminate pitch plays, you eliminate the fly sweeps. You now force them into that A and B gap runs. They have to live there now. And now you can start to work off of that. You begin here, and then you just sort of slide into kind of shoring up the middle there from it as you go through a game and trying to stop that run. And I can see how his philosophy works with this. I see how his philosophy works with this, Eric, in having specialized personnel to run down situations. I think we're going to see it this week at times with his use of 3-4, especially if you get 2 tight end packages. I think you're going to get Mike pivoting at times that 3-4 going, I see what you're trying to do, Sean. You're trying to catch me in nickel and go with a 4-man front for your 2 tight ends. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll go 3-4, and I'm going to force your quarterback to have to hit that read on that and go to the pass play you have as your second play call there, probably in the huddle there. And that's the way we're going to run this. And I think that he's going to be just not going to make it easy on these teams. They might beat us, but you're going to beat us before you could do it sometimes doing the easy way. And like they always say, Brandon, you can have it the hard way, you have the easy way. We'd always go, well, we'll give it to you the easy way. I think if you beat Macdonald's defense, you're going to do it the hard way.
And, that's what we've been asking for a while. Take some chances, take some risks. It's okay if you get beat deep. It's okay if you give up a big play. I mean, honestly, Carroll's defense wasn't that great at preventing big plays the last couple of years, it felt like anyway. So
the great irony of the defense is that that's what was at the forefront of what it wanted to do, right, Brendan? We're going to stop the run, turn you one-dimensional, and we're going to limit the big play. But that's the beginning spots of Carroll's defense. But to Brendan's point, over the past couple of years, it's been kind of 2 of the more failing attributes of the defense at the forefront of the failing attributes of the defense.
Right.
Thank you, though. Eric, I really appreciate all of your support today, man. You're very kind in all of those donations, and all of you guys for that matter. Thank you so very much for that. Really appreciated. And is there, as far as defensively anything goes here, one thing I was looking at on this is I would like to try to target up a Derek Hall with McGlinchey. I always have those memories of McGlinchey with Clowney a couple of years ago in San Fran and dealing with those power rushers that can really get into him, and forklift him. I want Derek Hall forklifting in this game, give him the hard hat. I want to hear some beep, beep sounds, but I want forklifting to go on. So let's get him over on that side. Maybe have Boye off on the blind side there. Let him roll off that edge. Is there any other matchups you'd like to seek to attack or anything stylings within this defensively that you want to see from them?
I don't know if it's a matchup, but this is going to be an interesting opportunity to examine Bo Nix because he did not run a 40 time at the combine or at his pro day. So we do not know how fast he actually is. We know how fast he looked when he was at Oregon. And this is always interesting, right? Because you have players like Russell Wilson who look fast in college. And then they get to the NFL and they're still fast. They can still move. I'm talking about when Russell Wilson entered the league, of course. He ran like a 4.52 or something, and it looked like that on the field. Baker Mayfield looked just as fast in college as Russell Wilson, but then he ran that 4.8, and then he gets to the NFL, and it's like, no, this guy can't really move that well. This guy doesn't really have those wheels the way Wilson did. So I'm looking at Bo Nix, and I'm wondering, which one is it? Are you the 4.5 guy, or are you the 4.8 guy? And that's going to go a long way, I think, in determining his success at the NFL level. Is he actually the guy who can escape from these linebackers and defensive linemen and edge rushers? Or is he the guy who, like Baker, is just going to get caught by them? So that I think is going to be our first real opportunity to examine that.
Interesting choice on his part not to run too, because he did look like that 4.5 guy. And if he had run that 4.5 speed, maybe he just didn't think there was really a chance to elevate his stock, even if he ran the 4.5, that people's opinion of him would be set. But he looked that on tape. He looked, 4.55-ish. I'd bet if I'd guess, maybe like you said, I think he's kind of somewhere in between those two guys, between a Baker and a Russ probably. But fast, fast enough. Not an improviser necessarily. It's more of a make the one read and then run guy.
Right.
He ain't a pirouette, spin back, twist. It's going to be like, oh, not there, go. So maybe a game we see some quarterback spying going on a little bit in this game at 2 at times with him to try to not let him lean on that part of this game from his standpoint of it. But make him process, Brandon. Make this kid think in the pocket.
Yeah, I mean, like the comp that I've used for Bo Nix a little bit is Jalen Hurts, right? If this works out, it'll work out the way Jalen Hurts has worked out. He's got a bit of a better arm, probably. He can probably chuck it a little bit better, but it's very similar to the Jalen Hurts stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
So, yeah. So it's not really a matchup, like I said, but that's what I want to see. Is there a reason why he didn't run? Because did he not run because he knew he'd run that 4.8 and he didn't want to hurt himself? Or did he already know he was going to be a top half of the first round guy, which he was, and was like, I don't need to put this at risk.
Well, to your point, like I was saying before on this, runs the 4.5. Maybe that doesn't elevate his stock. But to your point, he runs a 4.75, runs a 4.7 even. Does it dip his stock? And maybe that's why he doesn't run that at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I still think he was overdrafted personally. I would not have taken him at 12. I feel like he was a high second or late first QB at best. I was not super high on him as a prospect, but I also understand that Denver needed a quarterback and he was the only one left. I get that. I understand that angle on it, but I really try to avoid thinking like that. I think you get into a lot of trouble when you start thinking like that.
Yeah, I think for me too, it's also the nature of Payton and what he wants to do offensively. Why did he not like Russell as much? Because he doesn't want any real improvisation. He wants things done within structure and that you're going from here to there. And if something happens improvisation, they'll be every once in a while. I script the plays. I'm brilliant in my approach. I'm going to tell you the right way to do it the way I'm telling you to do it. And with Nix, he gets that guy who will go like, okay, I'll do it down to exactly how you tell me. And that's something you can see from the Oregon tape is that he didn't process. He wasn't going through 3 different reads, but what they asked him to execute, he executed perfectly. He was on time. His footwork was good. He delivered the ball to the right spot. He could deliver with just enough velocity on it. I agree with you. I think he does have a little bit better arm than Hurts, and that gives him a little bit of an ability to kind of make almost all the NFL throws at a pretty good level for the most part. And that's probably why I put him in the first round level is not that he had a wow skill. It's that he had enough of the good NFL skills there in play, from mobility to arm strength to accuracy, to where then he's going to the perfect coach for him. This is the exact guy for that guy to ask him, like, I'm not going to need you to think a lot. I'll do the thinking for you, kind of. That's what I feel like with Payton. It's like, give him a quarterback I'll do the thinking for you. Don't worry about that, but do what I tell you to do and execute it exactly as I tell you to execute it. Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I get that. I just want a little bit more if I'm going to be spending a top 12 pick on a quarterback. I want somebody who I feel like is going to carry things a little bit more than a Bo Nix.
That's fair. That's completely fair on that side. Addison Shovel, thank you for another $2 donation. He says, is Geno or Goff a better quarterback in the last 2 seasons? Depends on the metric.
Well, in terms of just numbers and straight up performance, Goff is probably over the last 2 years top 3 or top 4 in the league. He has put up remarkable numbers over the last 2 years. Like, if you were to rank the best quarterbacks over the last 2 years, it would probably be Mahomes, Allen, Goff, and not Burrow because he got hurt last year. Maybe you throw in Lamar and I don't know. I'm forgetting somebody. Maybe no, Dak got hurt too. Maybe still Dak though. He was really good last year.
Yeah, he put up a lot of yards, so he'd be in that stage. I mean, it's kind of in the way you ask this question. It depends on the answer here. Is the answer based on just pure statistical production? Well, Goff's got him beat on that side of it. To Brandon's point, if it's also though taking into account supporting cast, offensive structure that you're playing within, performance of the defense on the other side of the ball. I mean, if we're going to take into the intelligent accounts of things that's going on, I would say that Geno's played every bit as good as Goff the past couple of years. He hasn't had the same supporting cast. And I think Goff's had a great offensive line to work with the past couple of years that helps him stay clean and cool. I mean, Goff's the less mobile version and a little bit better arm than Nix to me. That's what he is. He's a guy that you give him the plan A, you tell him what the plan A is, and if it's a good plan A, he will go execute that. Just don't ask him to have a plan B, C, D, E in the back pocket during the play. He ain't going to do that. He'll freak out and he'll spaz out and turn into something weird. But give him on time, on script, and he can be very, very good within that. But I don't think you can discount either his production coming largely on the back at times with this of the supporting cast, because you can see with Goff, with the Rams, and he had that great supporting cast. Great. When he went to the Lions and the supporting cast wasn't quite there that first year, he was kind of a shell of himself that first year. Then they got everything back in. Penny Sewell gets drafted, and oh my gosh, now he's back to where he was before.
Yeah. And yeah, if you flip the question, I think that right now, Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. I do. I think that I would rather have him at the very least. I'll put it to you that way. If you were like, okay, here's the Seahawks team as it's currently constructed, you can have Jared Goff or you can have Geno Smith. I'd take Geno Smith because I think that he's a better quarterback. I think that when discussing Geno Smith and the Seahawks in general, the thing people miss is that last year on third down, the Seattle Seahawks offensive line gave up pressure on 51% of their snaps. And that's really hard to overcome. I think people don't understand how hard that is to overcome. And if you put Jared Goff in a situation where he had to deal with that, I think we win like maybe 5 games.
Great point.
I think that if you put, honestly, I think you put Tua in that situation, you win like 5 games. I think that you could put Baker Mayfield in that situation and you'd be playing for the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. Maybe a good way of looking at this is we always look at it like, well, look at this, how good the supporting cast is. Instead, the better way you maybe put this is take that QB and put him in this team the last 2 years. You think he puts up same what Geno did? Do you think he accomplishes what Geno did? If 5 comeback wins from behind last year, like Geno, no, he wouldn't. And it's just one of the many reasons I have right now that I'm so high on Geno as far as him as a quarterback as it stands, Addison, because I think that's a great way to put it by Brendan. You look at it through that. Let's look at through the different window on this one. Bring that QB here. Tua is not sniffing 4,000 yards. If you bring him to the Seahawks team over the past 2 years, it's not getting close.
Yeah. Goff would have done good that first half of 2022 when we had a pretty good offensive line, probably. But
yeah,
agreed. I mean, the Lions' offensive line is elite. We've never touched that since the days of Walter Jones. We haven't had an offensive line like that in a long time.
Agreed. I don't think that we even through our LOB years had what their current offensive line's been at and how it's played. 100%. And that's no small factor. It isn't. And offensive structure is also, they're running a modernized offense in Detroit. We've not been really running the modernized offense the past couple of years. Our lack of targeting the middle of the field, the option routes that Denver runs, using the use of outside runs. I mean, just go down the line of it and you can, pick out stuff on that was being kind of held back there. So yeah, I'll go through on it.
It's always a good game to play. Put this guy in that guy's spot and that guy in this guy's spot. Like if Michigan has Spencer Rattler instead of JJ McCarthy last year, do they still win the national title game?
Probably.
Okay. If South Carolina had JJ McCarthy instead of Spencer Rattler, what do you think happens?
His gravestone is being chiseled by week 4.
Yeah. It's a very fair point, I think. And people, I don't know. People have kind of gotten away from that a little bit. It surprises me how much analysis of like Geno Smith involves, oh, he has this receiver, he has that receiver, he has this running back, he has this tight end. And the conversation so often doesn't get to the offensive line.
It really doesn't, nor the defense, nor the amount of time the defense is on the field, all those extra things. It's one that requires a little more in-depth look than most people sometimes want to give it, Brendan, where they just want to give it the cursory view and then move on really quickly from it. Taker 610 with a $2 donation. Thank you for that, Taker. He says, Jake Bobo is twice the Bo that Bo Nix is. Well, I can dig it. It's there in the name. There's no doubt about it. It's right there in the damn name, I tell you. Eric, thank you for the $10 donation. Appreciate, again, all of the donos today from Eric. Really very kind of you. Been watching all the game highlights from last year in prep for this season, and I constantly find myself mumbling to myself at how irritating it is that people keep saying that Geno had an off year.
Yeah. I mean, the highlight reel for Geno last year is beautiful. Like, I think people don't understand how beautiful some of his throws are. Do you know who Robert Mays is?
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a sports writer. He used to work for Grantland. Now he's with the Ringer. He's been writing about sports for a long, long time. And he actually said, he tweeted a couple months ago that my favorite quarterback to watch play right now in football is Geno Smith. And this is a Bears fan. He's not a Seahawks fan, to be clear. This is just a Bears fan who watches football and constantly practices self-loathing because he loves watching Aaron Rodgers play, and he's a Bears fan. But yeah, he actually said Geno Smith is my favorite quarterback to watch. Some of the throws he makes are just absolutely sick.
It stands out, especially watch all 22 at times, and the way he can evade pressure too on some of these throws he's making. But you can see a quarterback in a crystal clear environment, and I don't know that it always tells you a lot about the QB, Brendan, because these guys can look really great in that environment, and they get all the praise at that point. Yet it's some of the supporting parts that are getting him there. You learn a lot about the quarterback when there's so many things that is kind of pulled away from him. And to your point, he did have the receivers, and he's had the running backs in relatively good shape the last couple of years for the most part. But the other things that you'd look at, from scheme to how the pass protection, which was god awful, to the defense living on the football field, not to mention giving up a lot of points and forcing the offense to have to be highly productive, including games like Detroit where they couldn't punt once if they wanted to win the football game. Mm-hmm. And you see how he's doing it, which is not on the back of clean pass protection where he's going through 5 reads and he's got all day back there and he's cooking up a barbecue and then he finally throws the ball. It's, oh my God, he's evading something and still getting the throw off and putting it in a pinpoint location on it. And my thing on it, Eric, is I think it's box stat scoring. That box stat staring is what's really the cause of the off-year stuff. It's people looking at box stats, cherry picking other little ancillary stats that they can pull from Geno, and then trying to combo that together to say it was a down year. It's not looking at the actual film. You can't get them to, when you start having them reference points of film, they start to get lost in the conversation because they just want to go to that stat. People want to make it easy peasy in their assessments. Football is never easy peasy in your assessment. It always requires a little bit more of the layers of looking at each individual layer to come out to the proper conclusion. I think in Geno's case, a lot of people are on that thin first top layer, and that's where they want to stay with him at times. And it's why I rail against it so much, is because the guy has played such good football over the past 2 years, and he's about to have his best year of his career right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go look up the stats that Carson Wentz put up in 2021 with the Colts. They were beautiful stats. Colts threw him right out the door that offseason because he sucked and they knew it. This isn't the 1980s anymore. You don't have to use box score stats. We've evolved, right? It's like RBIs in baseball. Nobody cares about RBIs anymore.
ERA.
ERA. We threw all that stuff out. Get with the times, people.
Yeah. So it's something I've seen too and heard often this offseason, Eric. I've railed against it. Brendan's railed against it many different times over. We've presented a collection, to Brendan's point on this, of statistical backing and just also, again, referencing game points and game film and, leaving Micah Parsons unblocked, on a key play in Dallas on the same point that throughout that game, to Brendan's point on that, you'd been at like 55% as the pressure rate on just his dropbacks, not just third down, but just pure dropbacks throughout the course of that game. It's like, what do you want the guy to do? Nobody's going to be able to succeed in that environment. And the fact that he found success and that he got you, places where you got to the playoffs last year. And again, pointing that Niner game, he's scoring just about every possession on the road in that Niner game, in that playoffs, as your defense can't get one single stop. And people forget about these the moments along the way of it. It just becomes that, what's the stats tell me? Like, look at the whole thing. Look at it all.
Yeah. I mean, think about how many interceptions he's thrown over the last 2 years, because in the back of his mind, he knows that I cannot trust my defense to do anything. I have to score a touchdown every time I get the ball, no matter what. So I just got to risk it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking about that Panthers game 2 years ago. I was in Vegas watching this one. It was the game that we lost against the Panthers and Sam Darnold.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was a game where the defense could not stop the run at all. I think that they started running the exact same play against us like 8 times in a row, and we never stopped it. Just run the ball up the middle. And we had no running backs that game. Our starting running back in that game was Travis Homer on 1 foot. And behind him, we had some guy we picked up off the street. So it was just like, yeah, he's just going to have to wing it around the field and hope things work out. Like, if he throws a bunch of interceptions, who cares? We were going to lose anyway. You got to try. So he throws, I think, 3 interceptions in that game. People get on his case, but realistically, like, you just got to chuck it up and pray in that situation.
It's not ideal football to ask your quarterback to be playing that way. And so remove those other things. It's not on him that he has to remove that. It's on remove these other things from it, and he'll be so much better with it. And that's why I got that confidence this year. But that's another great moment to reference. And there's so many of these ones that we could kind of bring up, I think, Eric, over these past couple of years with Geno. And I'm going to love watching him play great this year. And if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to just ball out. Thank you, though. Again, Eric, man, for all the donations. Addison Shelbowl, thank you for the $5. Appreciate your double dono as well. Says, if you put 95% of quarterbacks in Geno's situation over the last 2 years, there's no way they win more games than they lose over that period.
Yeah, I don't know if the number is 95%, but it's a lot. It's a lot more than some people would think. Like, I don't think like CJ Stroud. What does CJ Stroud do if you put him on the Seahawks last year? Does he win more than 9 games? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
No.
Does Jordan Love? I don't think so.
I think Addison's probably pretty close to the 95. If it's not 95, it's probably at least 90. But I might even say it might be at the 95%. I went back and looked through, remember I took a look into this exercise, Brendan, of looking at PFF's pass protection scores and looking at those teams that were 27th and beyond, 27 to 32. And I looked over a 5-year stretch of that period because Seahawks were 28th in pass protection last year. They've not been good last couple of years overall. And the thing that I found over that 5-year stretch was that there was one quarterback outside from Geno and what he did, one quarterback who went out and had a good season when their pass protection was that horrible. Throw everything else out. How's your running game? How's your defense? Throw it all out. A pass protection unit that's rated 27 through 32 over a 5-year stretch. That's not a small sample size, is it, Brendan? That's a pretty good amount of data. I'm looking at 5 teams a year at that, right? 5 teams, 5-year period. That's 25 teams. 2 players basically with a Joe Burrow and a Geno Smith are the only 2 that actually played well when their pass protection units were that bad. And that's how big it impacts, on top of other things that were in addition to what Geno was going through during that time period, by the way, because it wasn't just his pass protection. It was the poor defense. It was the inconsistent running game. It was an offensive scheme that was really, really old and dusty.
Yeah. It's not just the offensive line. It's, Waldron, who I think Waldron was overall okay. But, he's certainly not Andy Reid. It's not like Geno Smith is riding the coattails of some genius Ben Johnson or
Right.
somebody like that, or even what's the guy in Miami?
Texans, or even the Texans guy that.
Slowick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that. By the way, another example of this. I looked at this. I looked at the bottom 7 teams in pass protection last year. You said we ranked 28th. So I looked at the bottom 7. 6 teams that were in the bottom 7 were literally the teams that ranked 28th or 27th through 32nd in offense scoring. Yeah. And the one team that wasn't was the Seahawks. They were at like 16th or 17th. They were the one offense that was actually playable last year, despite having offensive line play that bad. And you had to go up to like the Niners to find another team with lackluster pass protection that was a good offense. And I mean, we know that the Niners do it knowing that they don't have good pass protectors, and they just make it not matter.
Well, they get the ball in their quarterback's hand extra fast. They make sure that he's not holding that ball to get that pressure there. And they smartly build their offense that way to protect him in that way. But it's a great stat. And it does just show again and again that most of these quarterbacks would drown quick if they were put in these same kind of situations. And Geno did not. And that's now, if you take that away, if you have him now trying to now swim without the 8-pound ball around his ankle as he's trying to swim, but now he just gets to swim free without any weight on him. How does that look? Does he ascend higher than he ever has before? And I do believe it will be the case.
Right.
Thank you, though, Addison, and great point on your part. And I'm truly believing this. Caleb Tazan, thank you for the $1 donation. I really thank you for that, folks. Any donation you put on this channel is really highly appreciated. So whether it's a big donation or small donation, me and Brendan both are very thankful for it. It's your guys' support that allows us to do what we do here on our YouTube channel. So thank you, Caleb. Very, very, very kind of you for doing that. Hope you're having a great night. Nothing put as a message in your dono, just a $1 dono. So thank you for that. And hope you have a good one.
Thank you, Caleb.
Garth Knight in the house. What's up, Garth? Hope you're doing well as well. Says, are there any talented artists in the community that can paint a canvas portrait of BNB for Brando's back wall? I think we've got to, I'm going to have to maybe get that commission.
Yeah.
Isn't that the word they say, Brendan?
Fiverr. Fiverr's the website you want to go to for the stuff like this. I've used them before. It's actually a pretty good system they have over there for the most part.
I like it too. That's how I got my logo for it. I like what they do. It's fair. It's set up well. It's a good little deal. But we might have to get a canvas done at some point, a portrait done at some point.
Thing is, we never meet in person, so it's going to be kind of awkward.
It's true. We'll have to take it off stills and then put the two stills
Yeah.
together like
Yeah,
they do sometimes on magazines.
Did you ever go to, they used to call it the Puyallup Fair. Now it's the Washington State Fair. Did you ever go to that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was an
Yeah.
institution when I was younger.
Yeah, when I was a kid, they had a booth that would do caricature drawings, and me and my brother would get one done every year. So I don't know if they still have that because I don't go to that part of the fair anymore. When I do go, I actually went Saturday. So I did go recently. I didn't see it, but I didn't look for it. But that would be the fun one to get, I think. That would be more fun than the canvas painting.
That would be. They can be pretty brutal on some of those character ones. They go crazy with it. But no, that might be pretty fun to do too as well. And I bet there's probably some caricature guy on Fiverr, I'd reckon to guess as well. There's got to be, there's a speciality for everything on that. So it's a great suggestion, Garth. We'll try to see if we can find some way to put that together. There's definitely room on the wall, man. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's for sure. Space with a $20 drop. Space coming in. Again, no comment on your dono, but just the $20 donation at that. And Space, man, thank you. I know a member of the channel, all of you that are dropping these donos, members of the channel as well. Thank you guys for that great big support. It's really appreciated here. Very thankful for you guys on that. And that's amazing. You guys are awesome tonight, man. Can't even keep up on the donos. We got so many of them. Really appreciate you for that.
Thank you, Spaced.
Byron Diaz with a $2 dono. Thank you, Byron. Double B's in the house. I love you all. Say it back. Hey, much love out to you too, Byron. No doubt about that.
Thank you, Byron. Appreciate that.
We both, me and Brennan, with our people, with you guys watching and making sure you're keeping up on the videos, the support we get, our memberships, all that stuff. Neither me nor Brennan could ask for more. And what you guys do on it, you guys always hold up your end of the bargain on this side of it, Byron. So not to mention we love chopping up with you guys and having a chance to talk this Seahawks football. We're back. Football's back. It's about to really count. It's a beautiful thing, Byron. So you hear it well, man. Much love out to you. Thank you for that. Appreciate all of your support. And let's go Hawks. Let's get this dub this week, Byron. Let's get this dub.
Let's start 1-0. I don't care about anything else right now. Let's start 1-0.
Let's start 1-0. That's right. Let's make it happen. Very kind of you guys on all those donos. Well, you saw in your we already kind of previewed out the score on this and where you saw it 24-13. So you see this being a game that defensively, as we wrap up this defensive kind of thought on this, that the defense is able to keep things controlled running game wise, and that they might have a couple of plays they get there with Bo Nix, but overall you see a rookie quarterback in his first start and it looks like what you think it would look like going into it. Is that fair way of your outlook on this one?
Yeah, it's like in NCAA 25 when you're in the opposing team stadium and that meter goes all the way up. Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah. I like the meme with the guy they got who does the scream thing, or he's and they put the meter in the background and they put his face up there. And have you seen that one with him?
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
It always makes me laugh. I don't know. So probably shouldn't. I'm probably wrong for laughing at that.
Yeah, it's got to be like that. That's what we're looking for.
Agreed. And we need the crowd getting loud. I think they're going to be hyped this week. Brendan, new coaching staff, new system coming in. So I think the crowd's going to help out that defense considerably. Nix is going to be like, holy hell, I'm back here again. I had to play here. What do you play? Twice or 3 times last year, or 3-4 times or in 2 years or whatever. But
I played once in 2022 and twice in 2023. The second time was at a neutral site though.
Oh, okay. He's just like, get me the hell out of this place. Can I please not have to play here anymore? I thought I was going to the Midwest. I thought I was finally clear. No, Bo Nix, your nightmares are not done yet. One more week. So we do have this as a win, folks. Brendan's got a 24-13. I'll go 27-17 just to be a little bit different. We'll see who lands on it. I like Brendan scoring it, but I feel the same way. I think that you have this game in control. I think they are not going to allow them the easy road of the run game. Get them into those 3rd and 9s, get them in the 3rd and 10s, bring the stack boxes, bring a little bit of blitzing, make them uncomfortable, Brendan. I think you come out of this thing with a dub.
Right. Kick the ball out the back of the end zone also. I'm going to be very, very aggravated. My foot may go through the TV if I see Marvin Mims start to come out of the end zone. Yeah,
great point. I had that on my notes too, and I forgot about that as well. Just kick it out of the end zone. Give them the 30-yard line, call it a day. Let's let the NFL settle these tumultuous waters of what's going on and what's going to happen with this kick return rule 6 or 7 weeks down the line. And if we're finding teams are having some success by kicking off and there's some good things happening on the side, then we'll lean into that trend, but let's not try to get too tricky with this one on the kickoffs. You got Myers. He's got a big leg. He can put it through the back of the end zone every single time. Do that.
Right.
Do that.
I like it.
Well, I want to thank again, just real quick, Byron Space, Garth Knight, Addison Shelble, Eric, Michelet, Dark Hollow, Ender, Ethan Techworld, Janeth, Maggot, Yallen, Jeffrey, Kodad. You guys, so many donos today. Thank you for all of your guys' support on the channel. It's really appreciated on both of our ends of it. Folks, do me this favor if you haven't already. Please do sub up to either both the Hawks Nest and Seahawks Brendan Nelson. We would really appreciate it, as it does help us out. Hit that like button on either video side or both video side if you can, as that also helps us show up here on the algorithm as we can go into this season, as we're both trying to get this locked in. This is our time of year to strike, and strike while it's hot. So you can help us get there, and really do appreciate you guys again for all the donations and support to the channel. You guys are amazing on that side of it.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We will be back next week to do it again.
Back next week to do it again. Thursday, we'll be on. We went a little late today at 8:30 because the game got delayed, but we'll be on at 8 o'clock next week, standard issue time, and back hopefully at that point, both celebrating a loss and starting to preview a New England Patriot matchup on that side of it. Thank you, Brendan.
Who plays next week? Let me check real quick. Okay. Bills, Dolphins. That game's not going to get rained out.
No, I would hope not. No, you do get the torrential late summer rain sometimes. Yep. That's where you can kind of come. It's hard to tell in Florida, man. You could be like it's hot, and then 2 seconds later you're in the middle of a monsoon. So it's we'll see with that one. But thank you, man, for doing this as ever. I really appreciate you on that side of it. And I really look forward to this upcoming season and being able to, somebody was talking about optimism earlier, Brendan, having some optimism, being able to look at this and get into the depths of this and truly know we've got a team that's going to be trying to do all the things they can be doing to win from a standpoint of the X's and O's and how these games fit out every week in these matchups.
Yep. I can't wait for it. It's going to be a fun year. We got 17 of these to get through.
So a mere 17 plus the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Don't forget that as well.
Oh yeah.
We thank you guys for watching. We'll be back in a week. Until that time, get yourself hyped up for this game. I shouldn't have to tell you, but get a little bit more hyped up. We're feeling good about this season. We look at this as closely as anybody you'll find out there on this team, and we're feeling really good about this team, the direction, and even this year, even saying, hey, we might have to wait, but there's a good chance this team can already be ready right now to pop. So we're going to remind you on the way out the door, but you should be locked and loaded. You should be ready. You should be hyped up. You should be dreaming large, because this team just might realize it this season. Please, by God, don't you guys ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.